A man addresses a woman who was tied up in prison. Eloise Vaillant, the Grand Duchess of the North, who was a closed person, but deep inside a devoted person. The man asks if she really killed Roseanne. No one could have guessed that the suspect who killed Saint Roseanne was none other than Eloise. He asks if she can give any reason and if she committed treason of her own free will. The Duchess smiled and told him not to make her laugh, and then said that the church had revealed the whole truth, and she didn't understand why he was wasting his time on her. Eloise claims that His Majesty knows very well what kind of person she is, and then says that she will not make up pathetic excuses. As usual, she remained calm even in the face of death. The Emperor says that this is all for today and orders the guards to watch the traitor. Hearing this, the woman turns to him and asks him to execute her right now because living in this dungeon is a humiliating death, and therefore she would prefer to die at his hands. His Majesty Cayenne asks in surprise if she really wants this, and then says that it will be so, since she insists on it, and he will fulfill her wish. The master pulled out his sword, and then with one swing plunged the girl into eternal sleep. When the red liquid left her body, Eloise rather grew cold, and her red gaze was directed straight into the eyes of the Emperor of Cayenne, until the very end. The main character reads on her smartphone that this is the end of Season 2 and will be continued in Season 3. After reading this, she screams and asks if Eloise wasn't supposed to be the main character. The girl understood that because of her, she bought all the episodes and does not understand why she is just being finished off. She reflects on the fact that life is fiction, and everywhere there is one fucking disappointment. The main character is Kim, and she is 22 years old. She grew up in a rich family, so she was able to get lessons in various sports and arts. The girl also studied ballet dancing, piano painting, kendo, horse riding, taekwondo, and many other things. Among them, she loved kendo the most. After all, during sword training, she had the opportunity to let go of all her worries and just be happy. And so it was, but only until one time. The main character asks in surprise how she should stop because she doesn't understand what kendo has to do with her entering high school. Her father claims that she needs to concentrate on her studies now, and her mother says that they only sent her to kendo to keep her in shape. The woman explains that she and her father want their daughter to become a teacher and believes that she will make a great wife in the future, and they are saying this only for her own good, and therefore are waiting for an answer. The girl agreed because she worked to become a teacher, as her parents wanted, until one day she realized something that not once in her entire life had she been herself. Kim reflected on how she was a puppet under her parents' control, and nothing more than a doll, moved according to their will, and reading novels became the only way for her to let off steam. The girl looked at her smartphone with delight and realized that the third season was starting today. Immersion in the world of characters who were making their own paths allowed her to escape from life, albeit briefly. Kim was crossing the road and was deep in reading a novel because she was wondering how shocking this season would be. But suddenly she saw a bright light. The main character does not understand why her head is splitting and why her whole body hurts. However, she wondered when she fell asleep at all, because yesterday she was walking home and waiting for the green light at the intersection, and then she remembers that she got into an accident. The girl looked at it in surprise and did not understand where she was. However, she thought that it looked like some kind of palace, and she had never seen anything like it. The young lady does not understand what is happening, and she wondered if she was sleeping now, but when she looked in the mirror, she saw her face and she had red eyes. The maid turns to Her Highness and asks if she is feeling better. Then she says that she was worried because the lady drank a lot of wine yesterday, and when she drinks like that, she can't help but think of Duke Viana. Hearing this, the main character was surprised because she knows that she prefers soju and beer, and then she was surprised because she spoke about Duke Viana. The maid says that who would have thought that their Lady Eloise would grow up to be such a connoisseur of wine, and believes that the title of Grand Duchess has proven to be quite a heavy burden. Hearing this, the lady says that all this is impossible, and at that time she realized that she was hit by a magic truck and moved to the world of the novel, and she became interested in how shocking the third season would be. The girl understands that, moreover, if she is now the Grand Duchess of Cayenne, then the novella in which she found herself is called The Crown of Red Liquid. And this novella is the most popular at the moment in social media and on forums. Vianna was especially popular due to her self-confidence and beauty. The maid asks her, "Highness, what is wrong?" At this time, the main character thought about what it means. This girl must be her maid, Anna. The lady says that everything is fine because she just feels a little tired, and at this time does not understand why she became the Grand Duchess of the North Eloise, and why exactly the main character realizes that all she can do is teach and doesn't understand what to do inside a romantic fantasy. And then she tells Anna that she thinks she needs to rest more because she doesn't feel very well. The maid wishes her a pleasant rest and says that if she needs her, she can call at any time. When the girl was left alone, she realized that she was now Eloise, and was the one who did not hesitate for a second when her father, Duke Wayan, suddenly disappeared and easily defeated the demonic creatures of the north, which earned her the title of Grand Duchess at a young age. The novella Crown of Red Liquid still hasn't decided on a female lead. Maybe that's why those who supported Saint Rosanna as the protagonist and those who supported Grand Duchess Vianna often got into heated arguments. The main character thought that it was so good that she was rooting for Eloise's team, but she realized that this did not mean that she wanted to be her, because she knew that the Duchess would die at the end of the second season. And what was even worse, she would be brutally killed by the main male character. None of the readers expected Eloise to be a villain, that is, until the last chapter of the second season came out. Cayenne's ally, Roseanne, was kidnapped and killed by a conspirator. To find the culprit, the emperor dug up all the data about the incident, which led to a major revelation. Eloise was behind everything, despite being one of Cayenne's allies in the fight for the throne. The novella forums exploded in shock when Cayenne learned that Eloise, a person he trusted, turned out to be a conspirator. He hid his disappointment and doubted her betrayal. But instead of agreeing to Cayenne's interrogation, Eloise began a rebellion. As befits an adult novel with depressive notes, she was tortured until Roseanne was resurrected and eventually finished off. Roseanne is definitely the main female character anyway, and she's probably building a romantic relationship with Cayenne right as they speak. The lady looks in the mirror and says that if they continue her situation now, she understands that she is up to her ears in shit. The young lady does not understand why she feels cold, and at that moment, she realized that there was a robber behind her, and she quickly reacted by bending down, and then made a sharp turn and attacked the robber. Eloise realizes that her body was simply moving on its own, and she was not afraid at all. Or rather, she even calmed down and then attacked the man and finished him off. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, and they asked if they could come in for a while. At that moment, the girl thought that if she didn't behave like Eloise, they would start to suspect her, and then he offered to come in. The Duchess looked at the man and thought that he had a scar, and it must be her assistant Drayden, because he knows her entire daily routine, and therefore she thinks that she should stick to him. The assistant thinks that it looks like they were waiting for Her Highness, but she says that this is true and will leave the cleaning to him. He says that he will deal with it quickly. The man looked at the robber and thought that this body does not bleed much, and therefore thinks that cleaning will not take much time. And at this time, the main character does not understand how he remains so calm, looking at the corpse. The girl became interested in whether she could survive here, because she understood that every day carries some kind of danger. A few hours later, Drayden approaches Her Highness and informs her that he has already returned. The lady asks what he did with the body. The man replies that he left it at the border as always. Hearing this, she thought about the demonic creatures living there at the border, and she wondered if dealing with demonic creatures was not one of the duties of the Grand Duchess. And she realized that she would have to kill demons. Eloise reflects that she has learned something from today's ambush, and her body is fine, but moves instinctively. However, she understands that controlling the psyche is not easy. The main character says that this is a good job, and at that time she thought that she should be calmer because she cannot make rash decisions because this body belongs to the Duchess herself. And as she understands, her life is constantly under threat. Dryden asks what the plan is for today and reports that Johann requested an audience and wanted to discuss the knighting process. The lady says that she will take care of these things right now. He says that she just happens to be on duty at the border post today and suggests stopping by on the way. Hearing this, the lady was surprised, and he asked if she was not happy because she thought this was a good opportunity to practice. Eloise thought that she could get rid of the killer, so there shouldn't be any problems with a couple of demons, because she believes that it is not the strongest or the smartest who survives, but the one who adapts best to change. A year later, the main character thought that the first year had flown by unnoticed, and she had fit into her role quite well, and thought that surprisingly being Eloise wasn't so bad, although it was still dangerous. The Duchess understands that she has a wonderful status in society, and no one will even think of interfering in her affairs, and believes that her freedom will never be taken away again. The girl understands that it is, however, quite ironic to realize that her life has acquired more meaning compared to the past. By overcoming obstacles, Eloise begins to understand the meaning of her actions. Dryden turns to her ladyship and asks what she is thinking about, and offers to take a look, and then asks if this rabbit is not cute. The lady thought that maybe he looks menacing, but in reality he is still a good guy, and then she tells the guy that he can crush him like that. The assistant screams and asks how one can say such terrible things. At this time, the main character thought that no matter what anyone says, Dryden is really very nice, even though he tears demons apart. Eloise didn't waste time and constantly learned about what had happened earlier in this world, because the whole point is that she is the main character, and her novel is divided into 3 seasons. The first season, in which after the assassination of the emperor, the storyline of the 15-year-old crown prince of Cayenne, who escaped from the palace, unfolds. The season ends with the return of the heir to the throne and his corresponding rights after 5 years. Season 2, when Cayenne turns 20, he ascends to the throne with the help of Eloise and Roseanne. Eloise then acts as a conspirator in the murder of Rosanna. After this climax, the Duchess is subjected to all kinds of torture and ultimately finished off. The 3rd season came out on the day when she was hit by a magic truck, so the main character did not know the continuation of the story. However, she understands that at this point, the prince turned 15, and accordingly the beginning of the 1st season begins with the news of his disappearance. In other words, in order to survive in this merciless struggle for the throne, as the main villain, it is necessary not to interfere in political affairs and not to get involved with Cayenne. The assistant asks her ladyship what he should call this rabbit, Toto or Kiki, and at this time she thought that she would definitely be locked within the boundaries of an isolated server, and besides this, she cannot help Cayenne in any way when seizing power. The young lady understands that the most important thing is that she must live in the present and not in the future. Night Guard Commander Johann says that a letter has arrived from the palace, and at this time she thought that they were finally starting the novella. It was a notification about the death of the emperor and the disappearance of the crown prince, the only heir to the imperial power. The young lady understands that it is forbidden to approach the palace because any mistake could cost her life. Suddenly, the rabbit escaped, and the girl hopes that the prince will also manage to escape, but she wonders if he will find a place to hide. However, she knows that she should not worry because he is the main character, and there is no need to think about the bad. The Duchess asks Johann who sent the letter. He replies that it was someone from the palace and is afraid that he will not survive the night with such wounds because, after all, he was attacked by a dangerous demon. The lady says that this is terrible but she thinks that no one will have proof that she received this letter, and then she says that from now on, this information is confidential, and the letter must be burned. The lady says that they have never received such notifications, and asks if he understood her words. Eloise realized that it was time to act, and then tells the captain of the knights that her goal is simple, and she wants freedom, and from now on, she is her own mistress, and no one will dare to control her. The Duchess tells him to lock the northern gate, and then tells him that now no one will leave this place without her permission. She thought about taking her true path that was destined for her by fate, and swears to protect the promise she made until her last breath. A week has passed since the northern gates closed, and the crown prince went missing, and the young lady began to enjoy every training session. The assistant informs her ladyship that this was the last one, and at this time the main character thought that he had a real split personality. Assistant Drayden, despite his frightening appearance and tall stature, adores small cute animals, but she hasn't been able to get used to it for a year. The Duchess understands that on the other hand, you can't judge everyone just by their appearance, but she wonders how many people thought the same about him. The knight tells Drayden that she looks at him as if he is sick. Hearing this, the guy is surprised and asks her ladyship if she really thinks that way about him. Eloise says that they have killed enough demons, and so there will be a temporary lull, and she thinks to head back, and the assistant reminds that she still hasn't answered him. Johann tells the lady that demons have been acting strangely lately. She agrees with him and says that he is right, because each time the number of demons wishing to cross the border increases, and then asks if he can engage in their reconnaissance. The main character does not understand what it is, and believes that it is an ominous omen, and she understands that having become Eloise, her instincts have never failed her. The girl thinks that the wind is much colder than usual today, and then says that she will go first and offers to clean there. Dryden asks in surprise if she will go without them, and also wonders if something happened. The lady replies that an uninvited guest simply decided to visit them. The young lady reads the book and says with delight that she really coped with it in one day. The Grand Duchess of the North has always had a lot of responsibilities, and looking at the work log, it becomes clear how responsible a person she is. When the North falls, the empire will be destroyed. And there was written so as not to forget that with the dawn of the end marks the sunset of her life. The lady understands that for failure to do her job, she is threatened with death. In the original novel, there was a way to kill all the demons on the border with one swing of the sword, but this required the rise of a new emperor. The main character understands that she will have to wait for 5 years, but she believes that the riper the fruit, the sweeter it is. After all, she will have much less work from the moment the demons disappear, and in the end, she believes that her life will flow calmly in its own direction. Eloise is thinking that she needs to return to the present because the demons are definitely multiplying now, and it is quite possible that something is already happening on her territory. The maid asks her ladyship what she is thinking about, and then says that letters continue to arrive from the capital, and she does not understand what to do with them all. At this time, the lady thought that they were all somehow waiting for her help in finding the missing crown prince, and then she said that she had a simple answer. The Duchess reports that the North is busy fighting the Dominion, so the Grand Duchess is forced to refuse any direct assistance. The Crown Prince did not disappear. He decided to hide, which created a lot of problems with finding him. And the main character understands that he is 15 years old, but he made a very clever move. The lady understands that it doesn't matter who he is, and if it weren't for his escape, the prince would have been finished off anyway, and then tells Anna that she can go. The girl looked at her hands and felt pain at the end of her finger, and she became uninterested in whether something had happened to the boundary stone. The boundary stone is not just a rock separating their lands, but also a magical barrier from evil demons, because it is created mainly from the human red liquid that belonged to Eloise, and therefore she is sure that this pain is directly related to this stone. The mistress turns to the maid and tells her to prepare her things because she needs to check something. Anna asks in surprise if there is anyone there. The lady looked at the stone and said that it was all as she thought, because there was a smooth cut and someone used a sword to destroy the stone and cross the border. The maid tells her ladyship that, in other words, they really do have an uninvited guest, and therefore she thinks that it would be advisable for her to leave this matter for now and take a rest. The lady says that everything is fine, and she will find their traveler faster than the knights get here. Eloise saw a guy sitting under a tree, and he was wounded. Anna asks in surprise how he was able to get into the forest, and the lady says that he must be the one who tried to destroy the boundary stone. However, she thinks that it is too dark to see him, because he looks like a nice young man, maybe 15 years old. And then the main character realized that he is the one everyone is looking for, and she is shocked by this. The maid asks her ladyship what happened because the lady is behaving very strangely. At this time, the main character thought about how her whole wonderful plan just collapsed, and then says that she thought that everything was going so smoothly. But what she now sees is a completely ordinary plot twist for a seasoned reader of fantasy novels. Eloise understands that of all the places where he could hide for 5 years, of all the places in such a huge empire, he chose the north. But she wonders what the crown prince is doing here. The woman kneels and addresses His Royal Highness, and at that time she thought that such a scene was not in the original novel. And it turns out that all these years he was hiding in the north on the territory of the villain. The Duchess wonders how he managed to get to the border forest at all. Suddenly the guy grabbed the lady's hand, and she says in surprise that he is feverish. And at that time, she thought that his body seemed to be on fire. The crown prince says he found her and then collapses. The woman reports that his clothes are covered in red liquid, and the maid asks in surprise if everything is okay. At this time, the main character thought that right now they have 2 choices, and the first one is that she will leave the crown prince and return to the palace only with Anna. The second one, she returns to the palace with the crown prince, the main character of this novel. However, she understands that she prefers the first option, but there is still a high probability of running into a night patrol, and this will become a huge problem. Eloise understands that especially blonde hair gives away belonging to the royal family, and if the news about the prince's presence in the northern part of the kingdom falls into the hands of Duke Elysian, then she believes that it will not be possible to avoid meeting the royal family. The Duchess does not understand why this happened to her, but she believes that the situation must be assessed objectively, and that only one outcome is possible. The lady turns to Anna and tells her to bring blankets because the crown prince needs to be covered. And then she says that they will return to the palace together. The lady says that the wound is not deep and believes that the red liquid on the clothes belongs to someone else. And at this time she thinks who would have thought that she would bring it to the main character's chambers with her own hands. The girl believes that this should never have happened, and believes that she still has time to end her life. The maid tells the mistress not to worry, because everything she saw will remain a secret. Her Majesty says that she relies on her, and she can go. The main character looked at the prince and thought that he looked so beautiful, even in such a deplorable state, and she realized that she had never met anyone more beautiful. Eloise thinks that there is no time to think about his appearance, but she thinks that Elion would be very useful. Elion is Eloise's only older brother. If you check the novel, he is currently serving in the Holy Knight's Guard and is unlikely to come to the north while there is chaos and confusion with the throne, especially since the emperor was recently killed. The young lady believes that even if Elion is fired, for some reason the possibility of him coming to the north will also be 0. Suddenly, the guy came to his senses, and the main character turns to His Royal Highness and asks if she woke him up. The crown prince asks in surprise who she is. The lady explains that she found him in the forest, and he called her by name and asks if he doesn't remember that. He replies that he doesn't remember. The main character wonders if His Royal Majesty remembers anything. The guy asks in surprise why she addresses him like that. The woman asks what he saw last, The young man says that he thinks he wandered through the forest until he saw a purple miner. Hearing this, the Duchess thought that he probably meant the boundary stone. The prince reports that it seemed to him that it was blocking the way, and so the only way out of this situation was to destroy it, and there was a sword at hand. Eloise asks if he remembers what happened before arriving in the forest. The young man replies that he remembers nothing, and she asks in surprise, "What about the palace?" Cayenne asks in surprise what palace she is talking about. At this time, the lady thought that he really lost his memories, and then says that it can't be. The girl realizes that the main male character doesn't remember anything, and thinks that this is a lousy situation. And at this time, he looks at the lady and thinks that something is wrong. The prince asks if they treated his wound. The lady explains that his clothes were covered in red liquid, so they decided to treat the wound, and she apologizes. The gentleman suggests not to worry, because he is very grateful for the help, and then says that he would generally like to take a bath. Eloise says that she will do it right now, and at that time she thought that maybe after the bath, at least some memories will return to him, because she thinks that it cannot be that he lost his memory so easily. The young gentleman asks her name, and the lady replies that she is Eloise Viana. He repeats her name, and the lady does not understand why he addresses her informally while he has no memories. And the fact that she has already thought about it confirms his behavior to the proud prince. The lady wondered if he had really lost his memory, or if he was testing her. And the young man said that from now on, he would only obey her. Eloise, hearing this, the girl thought that this was quite unexpected. The prince says that from now on he will follow all her instructions. Hearing this, the main character thinks that this is a bit unexpected, and then wishes him a good rest, and leaves. The Duchess thought that what had happened now had surprised her more than the murder of the stranger on the first day after her arrival, and she believed that step by step this character would come to the fore in any case. But the only question was what influence her actions would have on the novella. The main character understands that it was she who brought him into the house, which is why the plot changed. And if the consequences cannot be avoided, then wouldn't it be better to improve relations with the crown prince? The lady understands whether he has lost his memory or not. One thing remains unchanged because he called her by name and therefore understands with whom he is talking. Eloise thinks that while the prince is young, she needs to take advantage of this opportunity and gain his trust so that she won't be executed later. After all, in principle, making friends with him is not that difficult. The Duchess thought that she would then hide it here because she believed that this was the most advantageous option, since all that remained was to put everything in its place. The North refused to participate in the search for the crown prince, and it is quite logical to assume that there will be people who want to harm her reputation. Accepted by society, but alien to the rest of the world, the Grand Duchess saves the crown prince from certain death and returns the throne to the true heir. The young lady believes that her help will also be rewarded, and she has decided everything. If she can't finish off the prince with her own hands, she will have to make him emperor. The main character asks the guy how the water is, and then says that they will deal with the medicine after dinner, and then asks if he still didn't remember anything. The young man reports that he tried to think about what happened, but everything seemed to be in a fog, and at that time, the lady thought that this was very suspicious, but the truth would soon be revealed. The Duchess asks if his name is Cayenne Helicis. He suggests calling him Cayenne, and at that time the lady thought that her life was now completely in his power. Eloise thought that she would raise a wonderful emperor, and then find him a suitable heroine, and that would be a wonderful ending to the story. And as a reward, she would take measures to destroy the demons with one swing of her sword. The prince asks if there is something wrong with his face. She tells him to never forget his origins. After all, he is the crown prince of their kingdom. The main character thought that after the medication, he must have fallen asleep, and she wondered what she was thinking about. Dryden asks if she is checking if he is sleeping. The lady explains that she is watching his breathing, because after all these campaigns, the prince is clearly exhausted. The lady suggests that he stay here for the next 3 days, and then it will be necessary to decide what to do with him, and then asks the assistant if he understood the meaning of her words. Dryden says to find a potion to hide his true hair color. Medical products made from northern injuries can change hair or eye color. The recipe and existence of these potions is known to a narrow circle of people, so that it can be used only for its intended purpose. The lady says that fortunately, right now she knows who owns this recipe, and it is definitely her. The reason why her family developed the recipe for this potion is quite simple. All members of the family are famous for their black hair and red eyes, and in the event of an enemy invasion, the Duchess or Duke, finding themselves in danger, will attract third parties who will take the potion and pretend to be the owners of the house instead of them. The man asks her ladyship in surprise if she thinks it might not work on members of the royal family, but the lady claims that it might still be worth trying. Dryden asks if she has a plan, and also asks, what if things go wrong? Eloise looked at the prince and wondered how much he had heard since he was awake. The young gentleman asked what they were doing here. The assistant turns to His Royal Majesty and explains that they just wanted to make sure he was okay, and then asks if he needs help. At this time, the main character thought that this was to be expected from a member of the royal family, because despite such a dose of medicine, he was able to wake up. The assistant reflects on how he never thought that he would one day personally be honored to see the crown prince, so ruthless at such a young age. And at that time he realizes that something is wrong, because he is definitely not the kind of person who is capable of smiling like that. Eloise realizes that he has lost his memory after all, and she wonders if he shouldn't act in accordance with his true nature. Dryden looked at the prince and did not understand what it was, because he was smiling so sweetly at the lady. Cayenne tells the lady that he had a terrible dream, and at that time she thought that maybe his memory had returned. The young man reports that someone was following him, and the lady asks if he accidentally doesn't remember what they looked like. The guy explains that his faces were hard to make out, and he thinks their hair was the same color as his. Hearing this, the main character assumes that perhaps Duke Elysian was among them, but she believes that it is unlikely that he would not have pursued him just for the sake of this, in order to finish him off, because the Duke is very cunning, so he makes a direct move, despite the risks, which is not his style. The prince says that he is scared and cannot sleep, and the lady offers him to rest because she will stay next to him. He asks if she will sleep with him. Hearing this, the assistant was surprised and said that he repeated it again. The guy says that he wants Eloise to sleep with him. The Duchess reflects on how she has never seen such an expression on Dryden's face, because he clearly looked. Cayenne claims that this is a very realistic dream, and that is why he is scared. The young lady tells His Highness that she is forced to refuse because she thinks that it would be better for him to offer such things to his future wife. And at that moment, she began to wonder if she had refused him too harshly, because she thinks that it makes her feel awkward. The guy asks if she could stay with him until he falls asleep, and at this time the main character does not understand how she can refuse him, but she realized that this could be her chance, and this is the best time to get closer to him, because she thinks that taking advantage of such a situation is not such a bad idea. The Duchess agrees and says that she will stay with him, and then moves to sit next to him on the bed. Hearing this, the assistant turns to Her Highness and informs her that he needed to discuss an important matter with the Duchess concerning her safety. She asks if they can talk about it later. The man says that then he will postpone greeting His Royal Highness and will wait for her in the drawing room, and then leaves. Cayenne asks the lady if the man is her assistant, and the lady says that his name is Dryden. The young gentleman thinks that it seems that his loyalty knows no bounds, and the lady claims that he can be relied upon. Cayenne on the throne anyway, because that was the only way she would avoid her fateful death. The prince says that if this is so, then he offers to take his hand and asks if she can hold his hand while he sleeps. The main character looked at his palms and thought that he would definitely kill someone with these hands in the future. The girl touched his hand and promised that she would be with him, until he fell asleep. At this time, Dryden is thinking about how strange it is because his gaze changed dramatically when he paid attention to him, and he feels that hiding something is nothing new to him, but deceiving her grace is because he is such a grown-up boy, and he cannot fall asleep without his mother. The assistant reflects on the fact that at such moments, there is a lack of Eloine sulfur. Eloise thought that it was as if she suddenly had a son. Although if you think about it, their age difference is only 4 years, and she wonders if this is possible. The lady asks His Highness how he feels and how his wound is. He suggests calling him Cayenne, and the girl apologizes and then says that she can't do that. The prince asks if she will call him Highness in front of other people. She realized that everything was noted correctly, since she believes that in the future, it will be necessary to hide his origin. The Duchess called his name, and the guy said that he was pleased to hear it, and at that time, the girl thought that she had never seen him smile like that, and therefore thought that her lot was not so bad. Eloise thinks that it would be cool if he was such a tyrant, but with her he was a sweetheart. He would turn from a man who revered the main character and a respected person who cared about the interests of his loyal subjects. The lady asks how his wound is, and he says that everything is fine because it doesn't hurt thanks to her efforts. At this time, the maid thought that something was definitely wrong because she did not understand how a person could be so two-faced. The prince says that she was not his, and then abruptly takes his hand back and says that only Eloise has the right to concern him. Anna thought about how her grace wanted to help the crown prince take the throne in the future, and she realized that at such moments she missed Sir Eloine here. The man says that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and the main character comes out of the prince's room and says that he finally fell asleep, and she doesn't understand how he has problems with sleep at such an age. Suddenly, the man grabs the main character by the hand and says, "It's nice to see her." She asks in surprise what Eloine is doing here. The young gentleman tells Ellie that he of course understands that she is extremely happy to see him and asks if she doesn't think she should be more careful with how she addresses her older brother. The girl asks in surprise why he is here. The eldest son of the missing former duke and commander of the Holy Knights, defending Holy Eloine Viana. Contrary to what one might expect from the leader of the Holy Knights, he is a cold-blooded and cruel character. The fact that someone like him would suddenly decide to visit his sister in the north could only mean that he had an ulterior motive. Eloine asks why his little sister is so damn adorable, and then tells him that she's too embarrassed for her own good. Then he tells her that's just as he thought, and asks why she doesn't retire from being a Grand Duchess, because she thinks it's too much work for someone so sweet and fragile. The girl claims that she will never do this, and at that time looked at her brother and does not understand how the cold-blooded Eloine can smile like that. After all, this is too different from the novel. The main character realizes that at first, the prince who is supposed to be on the run appears in her castle, and now the apparently cruel Eloine actually turns out to be a loving brother who decided to visit his sister. She believes that if this continues, she will not be surprised if the missing count suddenly appears out of nowhere. The young gentleman asks if she is still confused by his appearance, and the girl asks why he decided to visit the north so suddenly. Eloine explains that it is obvious that this is because he misses his one and only irreplaceable little sister, and so he first invites her to sit down and talk. The main character says that she didn't think that his work would allow him to make such an informal visit to them in the north. He says that her big brother might be offended if she treated him so coldly. Eloise explains that she wanted to understand if he was sure that he could be here at a time when they do not have an emperor. And when she looked at the guy, she thought that his reaction was rather suspicious and thinks that it might be better to tell him about the prince. The young master asks how things have been in the palace lately, and then reports that despite the fact that the crown prince is still missing, they are coping mainly thanks to Duke Elysian. Hearing this, the Duchess does not understand why he leaves such pauses between sentences, and she wonders if Eloise knows more than he wants to show, and then asks if this means that he came to the north in search of the missing prince. The brother replies that of course not, and then asks if she thinks he can do something that would put her in direct danger, because he heard that something strange has been happening in the forest lately. She says that's exactly it, because demonic beasts roam there, unhindered, and cross the border in large numbers. Eloise is a northerner, and lived there until he was 15. And if he had not become a holy knight, he would have replaced the Duke, and simply put her brother knows much more about this place than she does. The young gentleman asks in surprise if she sent a detachment to reconnoiter the area. The lady replies that she did not, because she wanted to avoid unnecessary casualties, and then says that he just tried to change the subject because she asked why he was here. The brother smiles and says it was so obvious, and the girl realizes he is definitely hiding something. He agrees with her and says she is right, because he is not here just to see her, and then tells her that he has been cut off from his service. Hearing this, the main character was surprised and asked what he meant, and at that time she thought that it was impossible for the Holy Knight protecting the Holy One to be cut off from service at such a difficult time, and she believed that he probably meant that something else was cut off. Eloise claims he's a poor thing, and then says that even though he's a churchman, he doesn't understand how they could cut it off. The young gentleman tells her to be sure that his manhood is the only thing she doesn't need to worry about, and then asks how she even came to that conclusion. The lady asks if he has really been relieved of his duties as a knight. The brother says that he has for sure, because that is why he has come home to rest, and perhaps become a personal assistant, and then asks what she thinks of it. At this time, the main character thought that she would like him to leave, because her hands were already completely occupied with the crown prince. At this time, Dryden enters the room and addresses Her Highness, and informs her that they have problems. The young master asks if he means him by the problem, and the assistant objects and explains that he meant that the commander of the Holy Knights is heading towards them. Dryden is surprised to see that they have already met. Eloise asks what is wrong with the older brother visiting his younger sister, and then says that he is not even from a demonic creature, and wonders if he needs to be so tense. The Duchess says that he did not dare to frighten her assistant, and the gentleman asks if he could dare to do such a thing to the personal assistant of the Grand Duchess, and then looked at him and thought that this guy seems to be seriously striving for the position of his assistant. The main character explains that he acted only on her orders, and she told him to notify her first if he ever visited them. The brother asks in surprise why, and also wonders if she would like to be sure that she will be the first one to meet him. The lady tells Dryden that her brother is staying at the castle temporarily, and so he should be sure to let everyone know about it. She suggests continuing the conversation tomorrow, as she still has a lot to discuss with him. Eloise asks his sister why she looks like that, and the girl suggests moving straight to what he wanted to tell her yesterday. He asks in surprise why exactly. The Duchess reminds that he said that he was suspended from service, but there are not many people with the authority to do so, and of course there is Duke Elysian. The guy says that as he thought his sister is a genius, and the lady says that this means that he sent him into retirement to show her her place. Eloise says that he was probably already getting on his nerves, both as the Grand Duchess's older brother and as the commander of the knights, and that he most likely took preventative measures to prevent his influence on the church through the Holy Virgin. The girl asks if he has any desire to return to the knights. He thinks that sister must be joking. The main character understands that her brother never wanted to be a holy knight, and he simply had no choice. And since he needed to learn to control his holy power, since no one in the house had such a gift, he was truly special. Eloise went to the capital, and due to the sudden disappearance of their father, Eloise had to succeed him and become the Duchess. The young lady says that if she thinks about it, she thinks he should stay up north for a while, because she has a bad feeling about what's going on. In the original, Eloise dies, which is expected, since Eloise is also destined to die in the end. However, in reality, he had a chance to betray his sister and save himself. But in order to fulfill her will, he gladly sacrificed himself. And moreover, Eloise adored his sister so much that without his help, she would most likely never have been able to finish off the Most Holy One. The young lady ponders that while she is thinking about it, someone needs to teach Cayenne how to use a sword. Not to mention that Eloise knows much more about palace affairs than she does, so it would be much better to keep him to herself. The girl says that she is his little sister after all, and then she asks if he thinks that she could do something that would put him in direct danger. Hearing this, the guy asks in surprise when his sister grew up so much, and she says that to be honest, she also needs his help. The brother asks if this means she is ready to appoint him as her personal assistant. Eloise objects and explains that she simply needs a fencing teacher for the crown prince. Hearing this, the guy says that he is her big brother and would still prefer to be her assistant, and then surprised, asks what she just said and which crown prince they are talking about. A few minutes later, Eloise greets His Majesty, and at this time reflects on the fact that he would never have thought that he would be in the north because he means that perhaps one day it could have occurred to him. But in any case, he made a great decision. His Highness believes that he is Eloise's only remaining relative, and then bids him rise. At this time, the guy thought that the crown prince really had lost his memory, but he believed that this face could not be the face of a person who had lost his memory. Cayenne asks to take care of him, and at this time the young gentleman thought that he was looking at him as if he wanted to finish him off a second ago, and now he was smiling, and he became interested in who he was looking at now, but realized that it was his Ellie. The main character looked at her brother and thought that he didn't look particularly happy, and thought that it was expected because his sister had transferred the prince to her castle. The girl asks how many of her knights he thinks will recognize the heir. Eloise says that he would say that only Johann, because he always accompanied her during visits to the capital, and her incompetent assistant can too. Imperial law states that the crown prince must not participate in any political or social activities until he reaches adulthood. After all, Ellie reveals that she is still thinking about telling Johann, just in case, and the maid knows too. The main character thought about what it means that far fewer people know what the crown prince looks like than she thought, and that consoles her. And the guy says that it sounds like she plans to leave His Royal Highness here in the north. The Duchess believes that this is exactly the case, and she plans to keep him here for the entire 5 years, because direct assistance to the main character in becoming an emperor will increase her chances of survival. Ellie asks her brother if he remembers that she said that the prince needs someone to teach him how to use a sword. Upon hearing this, the young master asks if she is serious, and then explains that he is asking if she is really planning what he thinks. The girl says that she plans to overthrow Duke Elysian, who may soon become the new emperor from the Duke, and support the crown prince in ascending to the throne, and then says that all this will happen in the near future. At this time the prince came to the door, and he was interested to listen to what they were discussing, and he heard the lady's last words, and then left. The main character asks her brother what he thinks about this, and she means the prince's amnesia, because she understands that anyone would think it's so strange that he lost all his memories like that at once. The guy says that this could be her chance, and he talks about a chance to get out of this fight for the throne. Although Eloise had omitted some details, she could immediately understand the meaning of his statement, because he was offering her to hand over Cayenne and inform Duke Elysian and the imperial family of his location. At this point, Duke Elysian is the most likely suspect in the emperor's murder. If he learns about the prince, the probability that he will kill him is about 99%. Eloise understands that of course it is too early to draw any conclusions, but she knows that she constantly needs to be on guard, because even from the TV series she watched, it is obvious because those who are behind such incidents are always members of the royal family who want to seize the throne. The girl thought that Cayenne would not die like that because she needed him. And in the end, the prince was the only person who knew how to get rid of the demonic creatures of the north, and she knew that all this work in the north was too difficult. Ellie thinks that at this rate, she will have to finish off these creatures until she becomes an old granny. And then she says that under no circumstances, because if she gives the crown prince to the Duke, Elysian will arrange his death, and then that Duke will definitely become emperor. The main character understands that as soon as he gets the crown and asks who he thinks he will consider a threat to himself, brother says that them. Ellie claims that it is the Duke who will not calm down until he receives the dead body of the prince, and therefore their current situation may turn into a new opportunity for them because he will be so busy searching for the crown prince that he will not want to waste time on them. The Duchess informs that there is only one way to ensure that they all survive, because they must use any means necessary to ensure that Cayenne ascends to the throne. The young lady realizes that as long as she doesn't follow the plot of the novel and leaves the Holy One alone, then she and the Holy One will both reach a happy ending. The girl offers to raise the prince as well as they can here in the north and put him on the throne. Hearing this, the guy smiles and agrees, and then says that if this is what she really wants, he will not argue. Ellie says that at the moment, it is important for them to figure out whether His Royal Highness has actually lost his memory. And if this turns out to be true, then they need to help him regain his memories, and asks her brother if he knows anyone who could help them. Eloise reports that there is one person on his mind, and he will try to find him. The main character came to visit the prince and saw that he was sleeping, and she was glad that he was recovering quickly, but she was a little nervous that he wanted her to hold his hand every night before going to bed, and she thought that she would raise him well because she could handle it. The young gentleman asks if His Royal Highness has finally fallen asleep. The lady thinks that maybe it is because he has been through so much and continues to toss and turn. Elion asks his sister how she is going to tell her knights about this, and thinks that it is probably time for him to tell her, since the expansion of the northern influence is now critical. The young master believes that they can use the prince to strengthen their power. The main character says that she is thinking of using the prince to catch some rats, and then asks him how many spies from other houses he thinks are currently in her castle. The guy says he's not sure, and then asks what she'll do when she catches these rats. She says she'll deal with them personally because that's the only way they do business here in the north. Eloise stayed up all night and organized everything that she and her brother discussed the night before, which was to track down the spies sent north by Duke Elysian. The girl must disguise the prince with a magic potion and begin his training with training, and also assess the status of who is in the capital and inform her close comrades in the identity of the Cayenne. The Duchess realizes that, on the other hand, Eloise should be back soon, and then says that she is going to go to the border for a short while. The brother asks in surprise why at such a late hour and for what purpose. She explains that she needs to restore the boundary stone damaged by His Royal Highness. Eloise says that he will head to the border, and she is more experienced in potion making than he is, and therefore suggests staying here and doing it. After all, he thinks that they should at least start with changing the color of His Royal Highness's hair, since his blonde hair stands out too much. After a few hours, the main character thought that it smelled quite nice, and even though she had brewed it following Eloise's notes, she didn't know if she had done everything right. The girl became interested not only in whether it would kill him, but in the end, he was the main character, and in any case, it seemed to her that she would die if she had to brew this potion again. Eloise knows that it works for about 6 months, and to continue to hide the color of his eyes and hair, she will have to do it all every 6 months. The main character does not understand why there are no trade unions in this world, because so much work should be considered suicide. And I wonder what kind of life Eloise led. The assistant turns to Her Highness and says that he saw that Sir Eloine left with Johann. She explains that he went to repair the boundary stone, because for this, the red liquid of Cayenne is needed. Hearing this, Dryden thought about what it meant that they didn't tell him anything again, but he was her assistant, and the lady asked him to tell her how things were in the capital. The man asks what exactly she wants to know. Eloise wonders if there was news of His Majesty's funeral. He replies that if you trust the raven he sent to the capital, the funeral will take place in 10 days. Hearing this, the main character understood that it meant that the funeral would be held almost a month after his death, and then she asked what rumors were going around about the whereabouts of the crown prince. He said that so far no one suspects them. The lady states that the throne cannot remain empty at such times, and asks if there is any news of the coronation. The aide replies that it looks like the capital is planning to hold it immediately after the funeral. The young lady thinks that it is good that the events are happening according to the plot of the original novel. Dryden apologizes and then asks if Her Highness will be okay, as she believes that it could be dangerous for her to protect the prince. She claims that she will take care of herself, and when Johann returns, he should escort him to her chambers. The main character asks the prince if he slept well. Cayenne replies that he was scared when he woke up because she was not there. The lady apologizes and then explains that she had to go away to prepare a potion. The young gentleman asks in surprise what she is talking about, and the Duchess reminds him that it is about the potion she spoke of earlier, because it will change the color of his hair and eyes. The girl says that he will have black hair and red eyes, just like hers. Cayenne asks what she wants, and at this time the main character thought that apparently his color somewhat repels the child from drinking, and then asks if it is too discreet to offer it to him right in the morning. The Duchess says that they can reveal his presence after his wounds are healed, and the guy objects and says that he will drink it after all. She is the one serving it, and that is what is more important, and then asks if she still likes nice things. Hearing this, the young lady does not understand what he means and asks about it. The man tells Ellie that he has brought Johann, and the main character asks to let her introduce him to her people first, and the prince agrees. At this time, Joachim looked at the gentleman and thought that he did not even flinch, and he sees that this gentleman is the same as always, and he thinks that in any case, since Sir Eloise returned here, the knighthood must be in ruins. The gentleman asks Joachim how he managed to keep an eye on the forest so that the boundary stone ended up in such a position. Hearing this, the man asks for forgiveness, and the gentleman claims that his task is to ease the Duchess's responsibilities and not to bother her with minor problems like this. Eloise thought that he was in a bad mood since he met the prince, and thought that he seemed to have something planned for his sister, not to mention that Duke Elysian was still unmarried, so he needed to find a wife when he was crowned. The young master ponders that perhaps he considers Eloise a suitable candidate for his empress, and then says that he will not allow him, and whether it is the crown prince or the future emperor, he has not for a second had the thought of giving his younger sister to either of them. Dryden asks His Highness, and he then reports that the lady ordered him to bring Joachim to her as soon as he returns. Hearing this, the gentleman thought that he was probably going to introduce him to the crown prince, but did not understand why he was smiling so stupidly. The knight captain tells him to lead him, and at that time he thought that he knew that returning to the north was a good idea, because he is not ashamed of being removed from his post, and initially did not want to be the commander of the Holy Knights. The assistant informs the lady that he has brought Johann. At this time the man thought that he did not like being in the capital. The gentleman says that from this moment and from this second, they must keep secret everything they saw and heard, because if even one word about what is happening in this castle slips out, he will personally cut off their heads. The man thought that his role in the north was now clear, and if someone even tried to go against the wishes of his little sister, he would not let them go easily, and this also applied to the crown prince. The captain of the knights greets Her Royal Highness, and at this time the lady looked at the prince and thought that such a face was most likely closer to his true essence than the smiling one that he showed only to her. Ellie reports that these are people who work with her to help His Royal Highness regain his throne. In the original novel, they all died, along with Eloise's people, and her allies were brutally finished off by those beautiful gentle hands. However, the main character believes that this time everything will be different from the events in the original novel. The young lady knows that her goal is to help Cayenne take the throne and save everyone present, and there has never been a time when Eloise has not achieved her goal. It's been 3 weeks since Cayenne arrived at her estate, and she understands that the potion is of course wonderful, but she didn't think that it would work as soon as he drank it. The prince asks what is wrong, and the lady insists that everything is fine. And at that time, she thought about the fact that within the walls of her castle, Cayenne is officially known as her cousin. The official version is that the previous Grand Duke of Eloise's missing father had a half-brother, and that half-brother's son turned out to be a Cayenne. Although it's a cliched plot worthy of a cute TV series, everyone seems to have bought it. Ellie asks if he finished reading the book, and the man replies that he did. Hearing this, the lady asks if he finished the thick book, and the guy explains that there wasn't much to read in it. The Duchess asks what the name of the emperor who began to manage the waterways was. The prince replies that Curtis, hearing this, the main character thought that he remembered this thick and complex book about the history of the empire in half an hour. Cayenne asks if he can read this letter too, and the lady tells him to continue, because he still needs to know about it. And at that time she looked at the guy and thought that she would like him to grow up faster. Eloise knows that he will become emperor, and she will be the imperial teacher, and with his help, she will be able to retire and lead a comfortable life in the north. The prince read that the funeral would be conducted by Duke Elysian, the younger brother of the late emperor, and then says that this is the best course of action they can take, since the funeral cannot be delayed indefinitely due to the disappearance of the heir. Cayenne says that he should be there, and the main character says that he should never forget the helplessness that he is experiencing now, because all this was done by people who stole his place in the end. The young master wonders if this means that the man who is supposed to be his uncle will become emperor. At this time, the main character saw this facial expression, and the prince asked in surprise if this was true, and also wondered what was wrong. Ellie replies that everything is fine, and then says that nothing has been officially confirmed, but it is only a matter of time, and then asks if he really doesn't remember anything, and she means what happened that day. Cayenne says that his head starts to hurt when he tries to remember something, and then asks if he is useless to her if he doesn't remember anything, and thinks that he is just an empty shell of the crown prince. The Duchess screams and claims that this is absolutely not true, and at that time, she thinks that in 5 years, he will reach the palace and meet the Most Holy One, and then fall in love with her at first sight. After that, he will eventually become the most powerful emperor in the world. The main character understands that in order to ensure that some of this success returns to her, she must now work until she sweats and realize that she almost said it out loud right now. Eloise reflects that in the future he will grow into a capable adult, Cayenne, and that this will not change just because he lost his memory, but one day he will need to remember everything. The lady believes that this is the only way to reveal the culprit behind everything that is happening, and demand what rightfully belongs to him. The main character thinks that for some reason, by convincing him in this way, she begins to feel like an evil mentor, brainwashing the good-natured hero. The Duchess claims that he should become emperor because he is a good boy, and therefore all he has to do is obey her without question, and then asks if it would be unfair to take everything away from him now. Cayenne says that he will do whatever she says. The captain of the knights informs Her Highness that he has discovered them, and the lady says that she knew that she could put a price on him, and therefore offers to go with her and the prince, because it is time to get to know the reckless little rats that dared to hide in her castle. Eloise asks who the spy was working for. The man replies that it was for Duke Elysian. The lady says that as she expected who else but him would dare to even try to send a spy into her castle. And at that time, she thought that given Eloise's reputation in the outside world, she was not considered particularly hospitable. And it is not surprising that she was so feared. With just one look, she instilled a threat, killing both demonic creatures and people. The man says that in any case, they are dealing with only one spy. The guy kneeling turns to Her Highness and asks her to pardon him just this once. The lady asks Johann what the most important rule of her chivalry is. He answers that it is the death of a traitor. The lady says that she didn't think he would have the courage to do such a thing, considering that his family lives here, and she understands that the Duke's dog was hiding in her castle. The traitor turns to Her Highness and says that only this time he asks for mercy and swears loyalty to her for the rest of his days. The Duchess says that his understanding of loyalty is frivolous, and therefore she will take into account the time he spent working next to her. The guy asks Her Highness to pardon at least his family because they knew nothing about this, and he swears this. Eloise informs that his honor will not be tarnished in front of his family, and they will assume that he was killed by demonic creatures during a hunt. The man tells the Duchess that he promised to teach her how to rule her subjects, and then suggests that she watch carefully because that is how he rules his subjects, and then he plunged the traitor into eternal sleep. The Duchess says that if one day he realizes that someone has betrayed him, then he should make sure that he is punished as well. And at that time, I thought that I shouldn't have smiled like that while she was all in red liquid, because she thinks that she probably looked like a bloodthirsty killer. The main character thought that she should console the prince and encourage him not traumatize him, because she sees that his face has turned red and thinks that this has shocked him so much. The lady asks the prince if he is okay. Cayenne claims that he is fine and will never forget her advice. At this time, the young lady thought that sometimes his gaze was very frightening. The captain of the knights asked her ladyship what he should do with the body, and at that time he noticed that the prince was holding the Duchess's hand, and he became interested in what he was thinking about. Her Highness suggests making it look like he was attacked by a demon and returned the family's body, and then asks if Johann is listening to her. At this time, the main character does not understand why Johann looks like he saw something he shouldn't, and she wonders what's going on in his head. The prince turns to the lady and invites her to return, since she no longer needs to stay and control what they do with the body. The girl thought that he didn't look as traumatized as she thought, and thought that it was a relief for her, and then said that she didn't need to stay and agreed with him. Ellie thought that she would be able to take her hand, but the prince grabbed her and asked her not to let him go, no matter what happened. Let her never do this and not let him go. The prince says he needs to rest a little in his room, and the lady asks in surprise if he feels bad. He explains that he is fine but thinks he will feel even better if he rests. The Duchess reflects on how she thought such a scene would have shocked a child who had lost his memories. At this time, the young gentleman, when he came into the room, did not understand why, because he was an ideal heir from childhood. And to put it mildly, he looked quite mature. But to be honest, he was a child who behaved too maturely compared to his peers. The guy remembers that one day he was heading to training as usual, and it was a warm spring day, and among all the bright beauties, this girl with raven-colored hair immediately caught his attention. The young gentleman asked what she was doing there, and the lady replied that the rabbit looked so cute. The prince realized that she was the daughter of the Duke of Viana from the north. The girl asks if he is in a hurry to train, and then says that His Royal Highness will be scolded if he is late. Hearing this, Cayenne is surprised and asks if she knows him, and the lady says that he is the crown prince and asks if she said it correctly. The boy says that he also knows who she is, and then says that she is the daughter of the Duke of Viana. The young lady suggests calling her Eloise. The prince asks why she is here. Ellie explains that the rabbit looked so cute that she followed it and ended up getting lost. The young gentleman asks if she likes cute things, and at that moment, the rabbit runs away. Cayenne asks if she wants him to take her to Duke Wei-an. She replies that it is not necessary, because her older brother will be here soon, and then asks His Royal Highness how long he has been training. When the girl approached the guy, she realized that he was quite short, but he thought that this lady was very tall. Ellie says that in fact she also trains with a sword. Hearing this, the young master was surprised because she is a girl. And the lady says that she never knows what will happen, because one day she may become a duchess. The prince claims that the duke already has a successor and then asks if that is not true. The girl says it was a joke and she is taking lessons to be prepared for the future. He asks in surprise what she is talking about. Ellie explains that she means that she must protect the North, and then states that he must also study hard because he needs to protect the people of their country. Cayenne asks if she ever thought about becoming an empress in the future. The main character says that she will think about it when he grows up, and then smiles. At this time, the prince thought that from that day on, he no longer met Eloise, and while he went to classes for the crown, Prince Ellie became a duchess and had to fulfill her duty of defending the North. Cayenne thought that he only remembered Eloise's face once, when he received the news that she had become a duchess, but he thought about it because it would be wise to get her on his side, since she would be a good asset when he ascended to the throne. Sometime after his father's murder, the boy escaped from the ambush of assassins in the imperial palace, and at the same time rode north without thinking. Cayenne thought that he was not so stupid to go through the main gate to the castle, because the only way out was to cross the border and go into the forest. But he had to fight with demons that attacked from all sides. The prince remembers that it happened just at the moment when he managed to break the boundary stone and enter the forest, and those damn demons and the boundary stone completely exhausted him. Eloise, Viana Grand Duchess of the North, and the only person with the power to oppose the imperial family. The prince reflects on how he has dedicated his entire life to gaining the throne and is not going to give up so easily. At this time, the young gentleman does not understand why he wants to sleep so much right now, and when the girl saw him, she asked what she should do about it, and at this time he heard a familiar voice, and then said that he had found Eloise. When the young master woke up, he did not understand what this place was. The maid told the mistress that all she did was help her get rid of the murderer's body, and return to the castle, and therefore let the Duchess not worry, because she will keep everything she saw a secret. His Majesty does not understand why she treated his wound, and believes that the fact that she did it without asking for anything in return does not mean that he can trust her. The guy knows that he has never trusted anyone since childhood, because in fact, growing up in the imperial palace made him like this, since he was attacked by killers from childhood. And even the nanny, whom he considered a close person, was in cahoots with the killers. The young master knew that trusting someone would be the stupidest thing he could do, the crown prince. After all, he wondered if Ellie would really remain loyal to the crown prince, who had lost his memory. Cayenne knew that his plan was to test the Duchess's loyalty by pretending to have lost his memories. The prince thought that he had managed to reach the north, but he did not understand what he should do now, because he had said that he had lost his memories, and she, without the slightest hesitation, believed all his words. The guy understands that most people wouldn't know what to do, but she offered to address him as the crown prince and allowed him to use the bathroom. And he said that from now on, he would only listen to her, and smiled sweetly while saying this. The young gentleman believed that people are instinctively drawn to cute things, and he realized that he needed to be a cute boy, because the North is the territory of the Grand Duchess, and to lure her to his side means to gain the support of the entire North too. Cayenne believed that in order to become stronger and take the throne, he needed Eloise, and from that day on, he continued to try hard to please her and win her favor with his sweet and naive behavior. His Majesty thought about it, however. As with other people, he did not plan to show her his true feelings, because this was not at all part of his plans. The young gentleman does not understand why at that moment his heart began to hurt, and he did not understand what was happening to him. The next day, the main character asks him if he feels well, and the prince asks in surprise what she is talking about. The lady explains that she recently killed a man, and he saw it all, and therefore began to worry as soon as he went to rest in his room. Cayenne claims that he is fine because she was just doing her job, and it was done to protect him, and then asks if that is true. The Duchess says that, to be honest, she thought he was shocked by what he saw, especially after he lost his memories, and she means that he wouldn't have been shocked by something like that before. The prince asks in surprise why she is behaving so formally with him, and then reminds him that he already said to call him by his name, and even if the memories return to him, he wants her to call him by his name. The main character addresses His Royal Highness and informs him that only one person has the right to address him that way, and that is the Empress. The lady thought about that. In other words, she is talking about the saint who is currently in the capital. After all, it has been quite a while since she asked Eloise to monitor her actions, and she is interested in how things are going for him. The girl doesn't even know how true the image of the saint she imagines is, and the prince says that she is allowed to call him by his name. Hearing this, Ellie thought that in the imperial family, the name plays a big role, and he so easily allows her to use it. By imperial law, the names of members of the imperial family, with the exception of the emperor himself, are not disclosed to the general public. This law was made in order to prevent crimes committed under the name of the royal family. The main character does not understand why he insists so much that she calls him Cayenne. The prince explains that he has no one else who could call him by his name, and there was no one before either. Eloise agrees with him and claims that this definitely didn't happen in the past. And then she realized what he said and asks if his memories have returned to him. The young gentleman replies that he remembered snatches of moments in his life, and he did not tell her anything about it because he was worried that she would start treating him formally if the memories returned. The young woman claims that this is not true, and then says that until he changes his attitude towards her, she will not change it either. And if his memories return and he wants her to address him as the crown prince, then she will do so. The lady says that if he wants to leave everything as it is, then she will follow his wishes. Hearing this, he asks in surprise if this is true and if she promises him. The young gentleman turns to the girl and asks if Johann is the type of man she likes. She asks in surprise what he is talking about, and then claims that he is simply the commander of her knights. Cayenne asks if this man is her type. She says of course not, and he offers to tell her what type she likes. Eloise says that he should be a head taller than her, and it would be good if his status was higher because she believes that there will be something to learn. The main character asks if he should be a handsome man with a lot of money, and young and rich, tall and handsome, and then says that probably such a thing does not exist. Suddenly, the girl thought that now she described Cayenne in the future, who can be described by the tags arrogant protagonist and cold-blooded hero, and she understands that she needs to say completely opposite traits. The young lady remembers that when she was in prison, he came to her and said that he knew that he was her type, but she could not kidnap the saint only because she had gone crazy from love for him. The Duchess thought about how she would like to avoid such a turn of events, and then tells the guy not to worry about it because she would like him to be soft, kind, sweet, sympathetic, and attractive, because such guys are to her taste. His Majesty says that he understands and will keep this in mind. Morning. The next day, Cayenne joined her patrol squad in the forest. The main character looked at the guy and thought that he was doing quite well, and thought that it was probably due to muscle memory. Suddenly, the prince fell, and the lady screamed and asked if he was okay, and quickly went to him and then offered to let her see where he hit. A minute ago, from Johann's point of view, he thought about hearing that the prince was a fencing genius, and then realized that he was only a teenager, and his skills were already almost perfect. The people in the north are taller than the other regions of the empire, so when it comes to fencing, they have an advantage, but he doesn't show any tension when sparring with him. Johann understood that he was the true identity of the crown prince, since the way the young man looked at him now was completely different from his behavior in front of the Duchess, but he did not understand why he was hiding this side from her. The captain of the knights asks if he is thinking about something else now. At this time the prince thinks that he opened up and then falls to the ground. The man at this time thought that he had just stopped attacking, and then turned to His Highness and asked if he was okay, and when he heard the lady scream, he thought that this guy had deliberately fallen in front of Her Highness. Johann reflects on how it was unpleasant for him to see the crown prince holding the Duchess's hand, but when they met each other's eyes, there was anger and a warning to stay away from what he considered his. The commander realized that during the battle he looked at him with such a look as if he wanted to finish him off, and now he was pretending to be weak next to Her Highness. Cayenne tells the lady that he must have been nervous, and the lady says that his hands are shaking and thinks that it is probably because he was holding the sword too tightly. Johann looked at the young gentleman and thought that he was a cunning fox. A few hours later, Ellie tells His Highness that he looks better after a little rest, and then asks how he feels. He replies that he is better and not so scared anymore. The lady asks Johann what he thinks of His Royal Highness's skills. The man replies that he is very gifted and is sure that in a couple of years he will surpass him, and then asks why she is asking him and not Eloise. And the Duchess replies that it is because she realized that she asked the question incorrectly, and then explains that she means His Highness's face, and at that time thought that it was a wound from the aura of the sword. Eloise asks Johann if he used the sword's aura against him, and then claims that he should have been more careful. The man assures that it was not him, and the lady asks who it could have been then, since they were the only two there. The lady says that she apologizes and will immediately invite the doctor to examine him, and therefore asks him to go to the room first, because today she needs to talk to Johann. The young gentleman claims that she is again speaking to him formally, and then reminds him that he said that everything is fine, and offers to rest with him. The girl reports that he has a wound on his face. Cayenne thinks that if she feels sorry, she asks to be allowed to stay here and listen to what they want to talk about in private. The main character turns to her guard and asks him to report, and then asks if there was anything unusual today. He replies that the demons have been out of sight for the last couple of days. At this time, the Duchess thought about the hordes of demons that were previously on these lands, after the appearance of Cayenne disappeared from sight, and I wonder if it could be that their activity was connected with the prince, but she doesn't remember this in the original plot. The Duchess thinks there is something strange there, and she thinks about it. The captain asks if he should assemble a search party, and then says that if she says so, he will do it right away. Eloise objects and then says that she will take a look herself first, since they were planning to go into the forest together today. Anyway, hearing this, Johann is surprised and asks if she is talking about herself and the crown prince. She replies that she will protect him, and then asks what the problem is. The captain says he thinks the point is that it's not a very good idea. The prince asks the lady if she's finished, and then suggests they leave. The Duchess tells Johann that he can go about his duties, and then turns to the prince and offers to treat his wound before setting out on their journey. The captain turns to her ladyship and asks her that if something happens, then let her contact him, because he is worried. She asks in surprise what is wrong with him today, and then does not understand what can happen when she is next to him. The lady touches his face and asks if it hurts. The young gentleman replies that it is bearable, and she claims that he should get used to such pain. Cayenne asks if she is also used to it. The girl replies that she thinks that she is used to it, in some sense, and he says that he doesn't want the lady to get used to it. Ellie believes that he can make sure that this does not happen, and he can do whatever he wants when he becomes emperor, and therefore asks that when this happens, he not forget about her. The main character thought that he is not the only ray of light destroying demons in the north, and she understands that he can meet with Saint Roseanne because she does not want to be his only best friend. And Eloise doesn't think she'll ever run into a saint in the future, because then the Cayenne should be able to take care of his beloved without her help. The lady thinks that it would be great if she had a chance to become friends with the saint when she and Cayenne start dating, because she will be the woman of the man who holds her destiny in his hands. And therefore, she thinks that it would not hurt to establish a good relationship with her. The girl thinks that she just needs to endure a few years, and they will pass very quickly, and then one fine day she will be free from all this work. The main character believes that from this day on, she should focus on taking care of the prince, as she could even give him a couple of dating tips if she had time. His Majesty says that when he becomes emperor, this is what he can do for her. He will try his best, but he still wants the lady to fulfill one of his wishes. The Duchess agrees with him, and at this time does not understand what a 16-year-old child could wish for, and thinks that it is unlikely to be something serious, and then says that she promises. Ellie says that of course she can fulfill one wish of her savior, which will help her get rid of this endless work. His Majesty says with delight that this is excellent, because she promised. Cayenne, while in the forest, says that he is familiar with this place, and he remembers what happened after he crossed the border, although all his memories up to this point are vague. The gentleman says that the boundary stone that he damaged must be somewhere here. Ellie took it in her hands and said that here it is, the boundary stone that was on his way, and the young man claims that he is sure that he damaged it then. The lady reports that her brother has subdued him. The prince reminds her that she said that her brother is now in the capital, and then asks if he will return here. The Duchess replies that he should return within a few days to complete the task, and if he finds the right person in the capital, then this person should help find the cause of his amnesia, and therefore she is sure that he will cope with the task and return in the shortest possible time. The main character turns to the guy and asks if he remembers how he managed to cross the border. And at that time, I thought that if the prince could cross the border and penetrate the north, then that means that someone else can too, and therefore she must know how he did it in order to protect the north. Cayenne says that he thought that going through the main gate would be dangerous since there might be spies nearby, so he decided to cross the border into the forest. And it turned out that there were fewer demons than he expected. Hearing this, the lady was surprised and asked if there was a little demon, and remembered that on that day they spent the whole day destroying demons in these forests. Ellie thought that the prince must have crossed the border after they finished, which was expected from the main character because luck was on his side. The young gentleman turns to the lady and says that behind her, and at that time, she thought that even without turning around, she could easily tell that a demon had appeared. The demon appeared because of her manipulation of the boundary stone, because she wanted to summon the demon and test it. If the demon is here, then he should prepare for battle and draw his sword, because Cayenne should not stand there and shout her name, and does not understand whether the girl should start the fight first. The main character thought that she was not trying to force him to save her, because she even took a dagger with her just in case, and wanted to test his skills at least once. The young lady ponders that if he does not want to use the sword, then she will finish off the demon herself, and thinks that maybe he is not ready yet, and therefore thinks that she should. The Duchess saw that the prince had dealt with the demon, and she got goosebumps. And when she looked at him, she remembered that the prince had the same face when he portaled Eloise in the novel, and she realized that he would have the same look if she died, as in the original story. His Majesty turns to the lady and asks if she is all right. She says that he would have touched her a little more, and then thanks the prince. The girl asks why he looks so depressed, and also asks if he was scared. He answers that he was a little scared. Eloise says that this is the first time for him, and once he gets used to it, he will react calmly to this, and then claims that he is very talented and asks if he knows this. The main character says that not many people can kill a demon alone, and he did very well, and then she stroked his head. His Majesty asks if she wants him to be good at fencing. Ellie thinks that, because that way he will be able to stand up for himself if something happens in the future. The girl says that he will be attacked by mercenaries, And it is not only about protecting himself, because one day a person may appear whom he will need to protect. The main character asks in surprise, "What happened?" He says that he wants to hold her hands, but they are both in a red liquid. At this time, the lady thought that she was sure that Cayenne was not such a person in the novel, and thinks that maybe he is more gentle than she thought, and then says that everything is fine because her hands are dirty too. Ellie thinks about the fact that he is not yet the scary protagonist of the novel, but a 15-year-old boy, and he is still a child for her, and then she reaches for his hand and thinks about how his hand has become bigger, and now when she thinks about it, it seems like he has become taller, and thinks that children, as a rule, grow up quickly. The Duchess sent Eloise and Dryden to the capital to find the right person who might know how to help Cayenne regain his memories. The assistant informs her ladyship that he has already returned, and at this time the main character thought that he had returned earlier than she had. The lady sent her assistant after Eloise for two reasons. First, she needed him to attend the funeral of the previous emperor, and second, to find clues about Cayenne's memory loss. The lady says good work, and then asks how the funeral went. Dryden replies that there was no problem. The Duchess says that she has many questions, and they are not so urgent, and then asks if they can continue tomorrow. Hearing this, the man thanks her ladyship, and then says that if he does not sleep, it seems that he will die. Ellie asks where her brother is, and he replies that he is in the living room. The lady says that she will go there alone, and therefore suggests that he go and rest. Eloise asks the young gentleman if he has found the right person. Eloise is informed that he has found it, but unfortunately the one in question has become very sick from riding, and is therefore unable to speak to her now. The lady says that Dryden looked so tired, as if he was on the verge of death, and then asks why they were in such a hurry. The young gentleman replies that it is because he cannot do otherwise when he senses something is wrong, and then announces that he plans to remove this mask as quickly as he can. Eloise reports that he does wonder, and she wonders if their dear crown prince could have lost his memory or not. At this time, the main character thought that if this person is from the capital, but suddenly His Highness enters the room and asks if she was here all this time. The prince saw the lady's brother and asked if he had returned. Eloise apologized, and His Majesty said that it was nothing to worry about because he hadn't said anything at all. At this time, the girl thought that maybe she just had a premonition because she didn't understand why they looked like they wanted to kill each other. The lady asks the boys what they are doing, and the gentleman asks in surprise what she is talking about. At this, she thought that nothing good will come from the fact that Eloise will be hostile to Cayenne, because she knows that he may be cold, but will behave nicely with her. The main character thought that perhaps she would even be sad when his memories returned, because in the end, he would no longer behave as sweetly as he does now. Cayenne asks Eloise what happened. She asks if he will sit next to Eloise. The young gentleman asks if he is comfortable sitting next to him. Ellie asks her brother when she can meet the man he brought. The guy explains that the nausea should have passed by now, but he has a feeling that this person passed out from alcohol. The lady tells him not to say that the man he brought is a sure. Eloise asks if she knows about this sorcerer. The main character thought that the Shire was really in her castle now, and she understands that since Eloise didn't know about the Shire in the original story, the surprise from Eloise should have happened because Eloise was never interested in magicians. Shire didn't work on the mainland, so the two had no chance to meet each other, and the young master claims that he is still a drunkard but can be useful. The lady thinks that if this is the sorcerer, they mean, then today it will definitely be impossible to talk to him, and thought that things are taking a strange turn, because first Cayenne came to her castle, and now Shire. Eloise became curious when the prince learned about the Shire in the original story, and thinks that they met when he was still young. The assistant turns to her ladyship and says he is glad she is still here, and then asks if she has a minute. The lady reminds him that she told him to go and rest. Drayden says he drank a healing potion before coming and can't sleep because he wants to talk to her. Brother says he's going to his room because he remembered he wanted to do something. Ellie wonders if the aristocrats showed their displeasure. The man says they didn't show it, and the Elysian Hertz was looking for her. The lady asks if he hasn't relieved him of his duties, and then asks her brother what kind of things he is doing. It is understandable why Duke Elysian would look for her, because he wants to win the main character over to his side. And if that is not the case, then it is likely that he wants to take the opportunity to confuse her. And she is wondering if Duke Elysian was really the one who killed the Emperor. The criminal was supposed to be revealed in the 3rd season, but she got into this world before she learned the truth. The main character asks when the coronation will take place, and he asks if she is going to go there. The girl says that it is possible, and at that time, she thought that she really has no desire to go there, but she must remember this date, and then asks how the saint is doing. Brother says that it seems that she is doing quite well, and he means that Duke Elysian would not dare to harm the church. Drayden asks her ladyship why she is suddenly so concerned about the saint. Ellie tells him that she thinks she may be useful to the crown prince in the future, and believes there is no reason to be concerned about Rosanna's safety. The main character understands that at the moment she should focus on raising a good person in Cayenne. Eloise came into the room and said that he is not here because she thought that Cayenne would be here. But this also makes her a little sad that he is nowhere to be found. And she is more concerned about the fact that she notices that the young master is becoming nicer every day. The girl thought that he was like a little chick who was always next to her, but understood that she should concentrate on work. Suddenly, the lady saw a strange object and does not understand since when it has been in her desk drawer, because it looks like a keyhole. Eloise remembered that this was the necklace she found when she first woke up in this body, and it was shaped like a keyhole. The young lady saw that the secret shelf had opened, and there was a diary, and when she opened the book, she realized that she had a way to see the future. At this time, the prince came into the room where the sorcerer was resting and saw him sleeping, then took a pencil and tickled him. When the seer woke up, the young master greeted him and asked if he had to wake him up like this every time. Then he told him to get up right away. The mage tried to get out of bed, but suddenly fell to the floor. He says that it hurts like hell, and then says that Duke Eloin was talking about His Highness. Cayenne asks in surprise if he is not even aware of current events, and therefore thinks that he should not drink so much. The man agrees with him, and then says that now the Grand Duchess Lady Eloise sure looked at the gentleman and does not understand how he changed the color of his eyes and hair, and believes that it must definitely be magic. But despite the fact that he is a sorcerer, he has not seen anything like this before, although he understands that the reason he was brought to the north is to check on a person who has lost his memories, and this is His Majesty. The man thought that if you forget that the crown prince is still alive, then that means he was hiding in the north all this time, and in addition to everything he lost his memories. The magician asks if it's a lie that he lost his memories, and the prince tells him to watch his words unless he wants him to cut out his tongue right now. Cayenne wonders if he has already forgotten that he once saved his life. 2 years ago, he got into a fight, and when he was drunk, he was almost killed. But suddenly he saw His Royal Highness. The prince claims that the sorcerer never forgets to repay his debt, and then asks if he is right. The man agrees with him, and at that time thought that he was lured here by the commander of the Holy Knights, who offered to try the liquor in the north, but he did not even imagine that he would bring it to the crown prince. His Majesty tells him to lie about his memories of Eloise. The man understands that the payment of his debt is a lie in his memories, and he was scared because of such a trifle, and then asks what lie he is talking about. The prince explains that he must tell the lady that his memory will return slowly, and very, very slowly. Sure wonders if this is really necessary, and the gentleman explains that he likes the way he lives now, and thought that Eloise tends to show weakness around him, since she usually keeps aloof. The young gentleman thought that when he happily looks at her with sweet eyes, or pretends to be upset, she smiles at him and seems to be trying to console him, and he likes this smile. Cayenne isn't sure why he likes Eloise's smile so much, because he knows that she definitely won't be happy to hear that he cheated on her, and so the man will need to lie to her. The sorcerer asks if he lied about having amnesia, and then says that he thinks the Grand Duchess would be willing to let things slide. The prince asks in surprise if he really thinks so, and the man explains that since she is very familiar with political intrigue, she probably already knows that he is not in a position to trust her completely. Cher says that she will just think that he lied to her out of caution, and he thinks that she will understand, but what he cannot understand, and asks why he wants to spend the sorcerer's debt on such an insignificant thing. The man says that she will most likely say the phrase to forgive her for her insolence, because she did not want it, and most likely she will distance herself from him and will treat the crown prince like everyone else. The guy thought that his childish behavior as a 16-year-old boy would no longer work, and she would most likely not smile at him like that anymore. The young gentleman reflects that as he thought it would be better to just smile and act as sweetly and naively as he did before. The sorcerer asks if he thinks that if he behaves this way, he will be able to become closer to the Duchess, since he believes that he could use her power and influence to expand his capabilities. The prince wondered if she was kind to him only for political reasons, as the seer says. However, he understands that when he thinks about it, he feels uncomfortable. The magician says that of course the best way to get someone on your side is marriage, and believes that this is the best option for a union, and then asks if they are not that much different in age. Hearing this, His Majesty thought that he had never thought about marriage before, and he wondered why he got butterflies in his stomach when he heard about marriage, and his heart beat so hard. The prince believes that this is because he found himself a political partner, as Cher said. The sorcerer says that he does not know whether he should tell the Grand Duchess that His Highness's memory will be restored very slowly, and the Duchess should not worry or rush things, and then asks if the prince is going to tell her the truth. Cayenne says that it will be so in due time, and the magician wonders whether his debt will be repaid then, and at that time he thought that he could not believe that the debt for saving his life would be repaid with such a simple lie. The man understands that he is still terrified of the one to whom he must lie, because the Duchess of the North and her older brother are ruthless and cold, and he understands perfectly well who he is dealing with. The mage realizes that their cunning crown prince is determined to keep this lie a secret, and believes that they will never know the truth. His Majesty asks if he thinks that one lie is enough to pay the debt for saving a life, and then claims that he is even more impudent than he thought. The prince warns that if he says something stupid to Eloise, his tongue will be cut off. The magician heard this and was frightened. Then he looked at the alcohol and thought that he would drink a little more and die peacefully. The sorcerer says that since he is in the north, he is wondering if he should perhaps investigate the local magic, and thinks that this is a great idea. The main character asks if he is talking about the fact that His Highness's memory will slowly return. From the prince asks very slowly. Cher reports that His Royal Highness must have been in a lot of shock, and Elian asks if he is sure, since he knows how skilled he is at lying. The magician smiled and said that he was saying some funny things, and at that time, the main character thought that she had imagined the Shira completely differently. In the original story, he was described as a very skilled sorcerer, so I thought he would be arrogant. Eloise asks His Royal Highness if he does not remember anything before crossing the northern border. He replies that he has some memories and remembers living in the palace, but only in fragments. The main character says that there is no need to be upset, and at that time she thought that it would be even better for her if his memories returned a little later, because he is such a good boy now, and she understands that it is even easier to make friends with someone nice than with someone irritable. Cayenne asks if she is upset because his memory will slowly return, and the lady objects and explains that she will never be upset about something like that, and then he takes her hands Elian asks her sister if she has to hold hands while talking. Hearing this, the girl took her hand back and thought that she understands that in her eyes, he is nothing more than a child, and soon he will grow up, and he will need to get engaged, and therefore she thinks that perhaps she should not behave like that in front of others. Cher turns to Her Highness and informs her that, as a wizard, he cannot help but wonder how she managed to change the color of His Highness's hair. Ellie asks if he is interested in magic potions. He says that of course he is interested because he knows a lot about medicinal herbs. At this time, the main character thought that her plans did not include irradiating the Shira to brew a potion, but she understands that she needs him in the north because his skills were very useful. And perhaps this is not such a bad chance to take advantage of the opportunity and make friends with him. The Duchess thinks that she has the ability to see the future, because perhaps he can tell her about this ability. The lady says that she wants to ask him for a favor, and she intends to pay for this service, and then offers to go with her, and the two of them stay here. When the guys heard this, they asked in surprise why, and the lady explained that this was a personal matter, and only the Sheer could go with her. When they went out into the hallway, Eloise pinned the man against the wall and then said that she was ready to strangle him, but held back, and then she asked why he was doing this, because she thought he lied to her, and asked if that was true. Cher asks in surprise what she is talking about, and the lady explains that she is talking about the Crown Prince's memories returning slowly, and she asks if any of this is a lie. The sorcerer objects and claims that, of course, not because he only spoke the truth. The main character pushes the man, and he falls to the floor, and then says that if it turns out that he lied to her, she will cut off his head. Eloise invites the assistant to come in, as there is something he needs to do for her. The young lady muses that she needs 5 minutes to rest, because after Cher joined them, her workload is off the charts, but she thinks she can see the future. The girl says that this means that Eloise is gone, and she has the ability to see the future, and she does not understand why the diary cannot be more useful. The main character believes that if she can really see the future as the diary says, then she can stay far ahead of the original story, and her retirement will come even earlier. Eloise understands that this is a very important question for her, because in fact, it is difficult to understand what exactly is meant by seeing the future or receiving prophecies, because if this refers to a prophecy, then she should have received at least one by now. The girl reflects on the fact that she did not see a single vision while she was in this body, and in this diary, in very small handwriting, the necessary conditions are written. Ellie thought that of all people the Sheer would definitely know something about this, but she couldn't get anything out of him. And in the end, she asked him to make something else for her, and that was a potion to create a temporary scar. When the sorcerer heard about this, he asked for forgiveness because he was afraid, because he had never done anything like this. The Duchess asks if his eyes are just for decoration on his face, and then tells him that everything he needs to know is written right here. The main character says that she is trying her best to share the recipe for a potion that has been passed down exclusively in the Wayana house from generation to generation, and then asks if that is all his reaction, and says that she is disappointed. The sorcerer says that he must be a little drunk, and then says that he will do his best to make it. Cher wonders if he can ask her why she needs a potion that will create a scar. The lady says that it is none of his business, since she gave him the job, and asks why the hell he hasn't started yet. Eloise muses that Duke Elysian could visit the north at any time, so to make sure he doesn't recognize Cayenne, she should at least keep a potion like this around, just in case. The magician turns to her ladyship and says that he has read the recipe, and it looks like he will need some heliotrope. She asks if he means the plants that grow near the border. The man says he will have to go deep into the forest to collect them. The lady suggests talking to her brother and making the potion as quickly as possible. Cher asks if he could talk to Sir Johann instead, as Sir Eloise scares him a little. The Duchess asks if he doesn't like her brother, then what about her, and also wonders if she scares him even more or not, because she is very interested to know. The sorcerer asks to forgive him, and then says that he is already leaving and will immediately go to Sir Eloine. Ellie thinks that she needs to take a little break because she was too harsh with Sher, and now that she thinks about it, maybe she scared him too much. The lady thought that Johann was very busy now, and he had a very important task, and therefore she could not send this unbearable sorcerer to him. Recently, Johann has been closely involved in training Cayenne, and since she has become even more busy with work, she has no time left to look after the prince. The girl thought that maybe he was bored without her, and so he concentrated hard on fencing, which in turn added to the work for Eloine. While Johann remains the commander of the knights in the north, and while he trains Cayenne, some of his duties were transferred to Eloine. And noticing that the demon activity these days was unusual, Eloine voluntarily assembled and led a reconnaissance group. The main character reflects on how grateful she is to be surrounded by so many capable people, and if she had to deal with this alone, she would have already died by now. Suddenly, Drayden enters the lady's office, and she asks in surprise why he is so excited and what happened. The assistant reports that he has disturbing news, and then says that the prince is wounded. Cayenne during training reflects on the fact that he doesn't know what Eloise has been up to these days, and suggests that maybe she forgot about him, since she never visited him during this time. The knight captain suggests that His Highness focus on training, and then asks in surprise why he opened up. The prince claims that he is collected, and at this time he thought that he does not know whether he should now say that he remembers everything, but he believes that if he does this, the lady will distance herself from him. His Highness reflects that he thought she would like him even more if he remained sweet and obedient, and he doesn't understand why. The man asks the prince if he should finish for today. Meanwhile, Cayenne thinks that if Eloise hears that he had a short training session today, she will visit him. The guy thinks about how she said that she would like a man who is good at fencing, and she might think that he is pathetic if he finishes now. Cayenne asks Johann if he is currently engaged to someone. He replies that he is not engaged, and the gentleman asks why. Johann explains that the post of commander of the Knights of the North is very dangerous, and for the commander of the knights in the north, it is normal not to be married. The prince asks if he is sure that he is not interested in Eloise. Hearing this, the man objects and assures that he would never dare to think such thoughts, and it never even occurred to him. At this time, the man thought that he continued to find a way to keep her ladyship close to him, and he even dropped his sword on purpose. And therefore he is also sure that he did not even leave a scratch on his cheek. Johann believes that he did it on purpose, and it was in order to attract the attention of Her Highness, but he does not understand why the Crown Prince would do this. Cayenne tells the man to raise his sword, and Johann asks in surprise if he will focus on the fight this time. The young master thinks that he should therefore give it his all, and then they began to train. Suddenly the boy realized that Eloise was not engaged to anyone yet, but the sword somehow slipped and injured the prince. Cayenne asks for forgiveness because he thinks it happened because of his carelessness. Her Majesty says that she does not think so, and therefore tells him not to blame himself for something he did not do. The main character tells him to remember that he is the commander of the Knights of the North, and then says that he can go. Eloise turns to His Majesty and says that being distracted while practicing with a sword is very dangerous, because if he were on the battlefield, he could already be dead. Cayenne says that it is because he couldn't stop worrying about the fact that she might be angry with him. Hearing this, the lady asks in surprise why she should be angry. The prince reminds her that she has not come to him for the last few days, and then asks her to hold his hand. The girl says that from now on, she will hold his hand only when they are alone, and asks if he agrees. The guy asks why in surprise, and she explains that he is the crown prince, and he should behave accordingly in public. He asks her to hold his hand when they are alone. At this time, the main character thought that it looked like Cayenne had really opened up to her, and thought that she should use this chance to strengthen their bond even more. Eloise tells him that he comes first to her and has no idea how worried she was when she heard he was hurt. The prince asks if she can promise him that he will always be first in her mind, and the young lady says that of course she promises. The guy says that it's good that she promised him, because he believes that the Grand Duchess should never go back on her promise. After that day, time flew by unnoticed, and a year passed before the young lady realized that spring had come to the northern lands, and the prince had managed to grow up a lot because he met his 17th spring with her in the north. Cayenne asks the lady if she came to see him. She says that she did and suggests that he ignore her and continue studying. The guy agrees and says that she should watch him. The mage says that as expected of royalty, his height is something special. Sure has been in the north all this time, and she tried to think of a way to lure him to her side, but he stayed there of his own free will. One day when the sorcerer was fast asleep, under the influence of alcohol, Eloise forced him to enter into an unfavorable contract, and he really objected at first, but it didn't last long. Sure asks, in surprise, if he can really use everything that is there, and then screams and says that her wish is in order for him. The magician gave in easily when the main character offered him a laboratory with high-quality equipment for his research. The sorcerer says that he has brought another interesting piece of news from the capital. The main character understands that the Sheer is a sorcerer who prefers to work in the shadows, and thanks to this, in addition to the information that can be obtained in the usual way, the Sheer can tell her secrets that were sold. The mage thinks he knows that her ladyship would never stoop to asking for information for free. She says that the liquor he spoke of yesterday is now his. Hearing this, the man with red hair was delighted, and then reported that he had heard that the emperor was looking for an empress. Eloise realizes that it has been about 2 years since Duke Elysian was crowned emperor. Ellie asks how old the Duke, or rather Emperor Elysian, is. He replies that he is about 25 this year. The girl became interested in what noble lady he married in the novel, because she cannot remember whether he got married at all, and then asks what candidates there are. Sheer explains that there are quite a few ladies who want to become empress, and the lady asks if by any chance the saint was mentioned. Having heard this, the magician believes that the church will never allow this and will never accept it. The Duchess thought that this was right, and it didn't matter who he married, because the main thing was that she wasn't a saint. Sure asks her ladyship if she plans to get married someday. She is surprised to hear this, and asks if he is still drunk. The man apologizes and says that it was just a question. Ellie suggests listening to her carefully, and then explains that it is unpleasant to be with someone who is on a lower level in which he is. Because of this, the other person will feel inferior, and then asks what man in the empire can satisfy and surpass her level. The sorcerer says that it is the emperor, and she asks if he has forgotten that she is protecting and training the prince in order to overthrow the emperor. The magician asks if Prince Cayenne becomes emperor, won't he be suitable? The lady says that she is his mentor, and in fact, the prince already has someone. Sure asks if he is engaged to someone, and then says that he is hearing about it for the first time. The lady explains that he is not engaged, but there is someone she wants to introduce him to. Ellie wonders what he is doing at this hour and whether he should be working. The magician says that he thinks he should go to the border. The lady says that she will assign him a knight to accompany him, and therefore suggests that they get to work. Eloise's reconnaissance squad discovered why the demons were acting strangely, and it was because the border now had a new master. The border has always been the territory of dragons, but with the recent change of master, demons began to rage. The main character believed that the problem was that it was not yet time for this, because it looked as if someone had deliberately interfered. The girl believes that she should have dealt with this problem from the very beginning, but now it is difficult to focus only on this, since she knows that making Cayenne emperor is a priority task. Sure says that then he hopes that the lady will give him a bottle of liquor today, and he will go to the laboratory and work hard. Johann announces that he surrenders, and the prince asks Eloise if she saw that he won. the captain of the knights, congratulates His Highness. And the lady announces that it is not every day that she sees Johann lose. The captain asks for forgiveness. The Duchess tells him not to be like that. Suvorov to himself. After all, His Royal Highness has significantly improved his skills, thanks to his training. Cayenne turns to the lady and says that he has won, and therefore she should look at him right now. She agrees with him, and then asks, how about going for a walk together tonight? Johann asks where Her Highness is heading, and she replies that she promised His Royal Highness that they would go outside together if he won the duel. The knight captain says that he understands, and is not surprised that he fought as if his life depended on it, and then suggests that they forget what he said and wish to have a good time together. Ellie suggests the prince to go as soon as he changes his clothes, and at that time she thought that at least once she would be able to go outside the castle, thanks to Cayenne, since she worked day and night, locked up in the north. The main character thought that it had been an eternity since she had any freedom, because she was still working hard, so it was time to go outside and take a break. While on the main street of the city, the young lady thought about how much time had passed since she had been outside the castle, and then tells the prince that she will need to go on patrol, and soon she will need to make a tour of the surrounding area, because it has been a long time since she did it last time. Cayenne asks if he can come with her. She says that he could be in danger, and if people know his face, it could increase the risk that he will be known in the capital. The guy looked at the lady and asked if she was worried about him. And at that time the girl thought that if he was revealed, then she and the North would also be in danger, and that's what she was worried about. And then she said that of course if he was in danger, then the server would be too. The main character says that she is worried about the civilians, and the prince thinks that if she goes alone, he won't see her for a few days. The lady says that she is also worried about this, and that he needs to learn to command his men. The gentleman says that then he will take the Shira potion, because he invented a potion that can create scars. Developed by Shur does not create temporary scars, but rather burn marks. And thus, it will be difficult to recognize Cayenne's face if he takes it. The Duchess understands that although the potion was prepared for this very purpose, she doesn't think that showing the Cayenne to everyone is a good idea. The young gentleman asks the lady if she will take his hand, and at this time she understands that it is time for her to establish a distance in the relationship between them, because the prince will become an adult in 2 years, and it will be troublesome for her if he continues to behave like this. Then, His Majesty reminds him that she promised him that they would hold hands when they were alone, and the girl agrees, and then they hold hands. He tells her to make sure that she holds on tightly so as not to get lost since he is here for the first time. The guy claims that he will behave well, and at this time the girl thought that his palm had become bigger. On the main street, many people traded various goods, and of course all goods were subject to its tax. Taxes are not the main source of income for the main character. She thought that it was a bit strange to see people shopping with her own eyes, because in fact, one of Eloise's biggest sources of income is a mine located near the border. The main character thought about whether she should start a water business this year, and the prince asks what she was thinking about. Eloise replies that she is thinking about starting a new business. Upon hearing this, he asks if she is bored, and then says that he is so happy that he can walk alone with her. At this time, the Duchess looked at the guy and did not understand why he made such a face, because he looked like a boyfriend who was upset because the girl was distracted on a date. Ellie doesn't understand what she's thinking about at all, and therefore thinks that she should pull herself together because this is a walk, and she meant that it's more like a walk with her younger brother. The girl apologizes and then says that this is the first time he goes outside the castle and asks if she seemed uninterested. The prince informs her that she has been daydreaming all this time, and therefore asks her to give him her full attention from now on. His Majesty says that he didn't think that the roads in the north were so wide, and didn't even imagine that they would be narrower than in the capital. But it looks like he was wrong. The lady explains that they were designed to allow knights to move in an emergency, and at that moment, she thought that she was glad that his memory was slowly returning. The main character thinks that lately, the prince still often mentions the capital in passing, and this thought comes to her mind every time she sees him, because Cayenne has already grown so much, and she is pleased to see that he has become a good guy. Ellie thought that as long as she stuck to this path, she wouldn't have to experience the same ending as in the novel. His Majesty asks the girl if she loves the North very much. She answers that she does. And at that moment, she thinks that this is actually a bit strange, because only from the diary entries can she conclude that Eloise loves the North very much. The main character does not understand why she decided to start a rebellion in the original story, and believes that the author simply ruined his character. The prince asks the lady if she remembers the time when they met as children. Hearing this, the Duchess is surprised and asks if he remembered everything, and he says that he only remembers the moments associated with her. The young lady does not understand what to do, because she knows that Eloise began to keep her diary after she became the Grand Duchess, and she does not know anything about that meeting with Cayenne. The Duchess says that she doesn't remember anything, because it was so long ago that she's not even sure. The guy explains that he asked her if she ever thought about becoming an empress, because she replied that she would think about it when he grew up. His Highness asks if that was her answer, and then reminds him that he asked if she would become empress, and says that then the lady answered him that she would think about it when he became an adult, and today is the day he wants to hear the answer. The lady asks in surprise if he will become empress, and the gentleman asks if she remembers this. The girl screamed and said that she seemed to remember it, and at that time she thought that he probably asked that way because Eloise could be useful to him, and that was when she was the Duke's daughter. Cayenne asks if she has forgotten this conversation, and at that time the main character looked at him and does not understand what kind of look it was, because she believes that any reader of fantasy novels would recognize it. Ellie believed that these were definitely the eyes of an obsessed protagonist who was overly attached to the main character, and she did not want to believe that the young master had chosen the wrong path of development. The young lady does not understand why he would ask the Grand Duchess of the North to become empress, and therefore assumes that he is trying to irritate her. Cayenne says that these men look very much like people from the capital, and asks if she sees the two of them with a cart and flowers. She replies that she does, and the guy says that they have a southern accent, and if that is the case, then they must have come from there. The main character thought about whether they were either traveling or they were sent by Emperor Elysian. Although the latter is more likely, he thinks that if they are not ordinary travelers, he asks if they should be killed. Hearing this, the girl was surprised, and the gentleman insisted that it was better to eliminate as quickly as possible what could cause trouble. And at that time, he thought that there were many prying eyes around. The Duchess realizes that she has many people who can take care of this problem, and then says that it has been so long since they spent time together outside the castle, and so suggests that they just enjoy themselves. The lady says that she will ask someone else to take care of them if necessary. The young man agrees with her and says that he will accept everything she says. Walking down the street, Eloise wondered how long it had been since she had rested like this, because it seemed to her like an eternity had passed, and she did not understand why the Grand Duchess of the North had so much work. The main character thought that it was just a cliché to portray the great dukes of the North as cold and harsh, but now that she had experienced it herself, of course, they were not like that. The girl doesn't understand how they can have time to laugh and enjoy life with so much work, and suddenly she sees a fortune teller's tent. Cayenne looked at her and asked what she was looking at, and then asked why she didn't go first. The main character asked in surprise if she should go alone. The prince says that he will go and buy something. Ellie asks what he needs, because she wonders what he might need to buy here, because he doesn't need anything, and then agrees, and says that then she will be there, and the young gentleman promised to return quickly. Eloise looked after the guy and thought that he was going somewhere without her, and now she understands what it is like to watch her younger brother finally grow out of her care, and knows that of course in 4 years their paths will diverge. The girl does not understand why she continues to feel this way these days, and therefore believes that she must pull herself together because she has a lot to do. When the girl went inside, she did not understand what this sweet smell was, and thought that perhaps it was sweet incense. The woman says that she was waiting for the Grand Duchess of the North hearing this. The main character is surprised and asks how she knows who she is, and at that time thought that the cloak should hide her face, but she was able to recognize her. The young lady assumes that this woman is one of those who knew Eloise before, and the woman says that it seems like she wants to ask her something. Eloise removed her hood, and it is reported that she continued to speak and had the ability to see the future. The witch asks if she is looking for a clue related to the future, and then says that she knows everything and knows the secret of the ability that she is looking for. The Duchess is surprised and asks what it is, and the fortune teller says that if she tells, he asks what she will give her in return. The main character says that she is very impudent, and the woman believes that in a deal it is necessary to pay. The lady asks how she thinks, thanks to whom she lives on this earth and breathes, and the sorceress asks in surprise whether she decided to joke. Eloise pulled out her sword and then put it to the woman's neck and asked if she thought the lady was joking. Now and then said that even if she finished her off now, no one would blame the lady for it. The main character asks who can condemn her if she takes away the life that existed thanks to her. Hearing this, the woman smiled and then coughed several times and turned into a girl with pink hair. The young lady asks in surprise if she is Mabel and what she is doing there. The lady with pink hair turns to her ladyship and says that she has lost, and so she will give her the answer she wants to hear. And then she whispers in her ear that the secret she wants to know is what is needed to see the future. The main character remembered that after Eloise became a duchess, there was an attempt on her life, and she suffered greatly, and it seems that then she saw her future. The girl thought that if she needed to see her red liquid, then she considered that it was not such a good ability. The sorceress says that the prince will come here soon. Hearing this, the main character thought that she knows that Cayenne is in the north. Mabel was described in the book as a mysterious character, a magician and a spellcaster. She maintained neutrality between the prince and Eloise, and it is quite possible that she served the Emperor Elysian, or intended to get closer to him. Ellie wonders how she knew that the crown prince was here. At this time, the prince, watching the strangers, thought that they were definitely Elysian's people, and that he probably sent them here after he noticed Eloise's absence at the funeral and at his coronation. Cayenne remembered that Eloise said to leave them, but if he thought about the future, it would be better to finish them off now, and he would have to ask Johann to take care of the bodies. The prince attacks the men and wounds one of them, then says they almost ruined his date and kills them. The young gentleman saw that red liquid had spilled on him and thought that he needed to wash it off and return to Eloise clean, because he was thinking that she really liked his face, and of course, this was not in a romantic sense. The guy thinks that in fact, she is quite boring in this regard, and walking down the street, he felt a very strong scent of flowers. The girl who was selling flowers asks if she can help him, and also asks if he is looking for a gift for his beloved, and then asks about these flowers. The lady explains that this yellow flower is very rare in the north, and the women here like it very much. Hearing this, the guy thought that Eloise seems to like light hair, and therefore he thinks that yellow is the color too. Cayenne says he'll take them, and the girl asks what size bouquet he'd like. At this time, the young gentleman thought that if he wants it to look beautiful, he says that the more the better. The prince muses that this scent should help to hide the smell of the red liquid when he returns to Eloise. At this time, the main character asks the woman in surprise how she knew that the crown prince was here. The sorceress replies that she did not know that he was here, but when she arrived, she felt a person with such an aura as his, because this is quite rare. Ellie is surprised and asks if she means the same as the man who now sits on the throne. Mabel thinks that her ladyship is now trying to test her and then assures her that she does not want to be her enemy. The Duchess says that she doesn't trust anyone except her people, and the witch asks if she wants to prove that she is one of her people. Ellie believes that if she wants to be one of them, she would have shown herself by now. The lady with pink hair claims that she will soon prove her loyalty to her, but for now she must disappear before His Highness arrives. The lady thinks that it seems she is avoiding Cayenne and asks if there is a reason for this. Hearing this, the girl is surprised and asks if she calls him by name. At this time, the main character thought that this was true, because members of the royal family do not give permission to call themselves by their name so easily, but still he allowed her to use his name when he lost his memory. Eloise thinks it's normal, but understands that others might find it weird. Meanwhile, the witch senses the prince's aura approaching and says she'll visit her soon. The Duchess saw that this witch had turned into a bird and did not understand what she had planned because she wanted to visit her soon, and saw the brooch and thought that she must have left it there on purpose. The lady did not understand whether she should take it with her or leave it. Suddenly, the girl saw the prince standing with a large bouquet of flowers. He asks what she thinks about it and also asks if she likes this bouquet. The lady says with delight that the flowers are very beautiful, and so is he. Having heard this, guy was surprised, but did not hide that he was glad to hear it. Eloise thinks that she is very sorry because he looked much more handsome with his platinum hair. The prince asks if she likes blondes, and at this time the main character thought about what she means. If she has to express her opinion, it is not that she likes blonde hair, but that she has a weakness for unrequited male characters, and the golden rule of novels is that they are all blondes. The main character says that it is beautiful and makes him shine like a star. Hearing this, the young gentleman was delighted, and then says that her hair is also beautiful because it is dark as night and her skin is white as day. Ellie asks if he brought this bouquet for her and then takes it and thanks her, and at this time she thinks about the fact that she does not understand why he suddenly compliments her hair and why he gives her flowers. Suddenly, the young gentleman sees the brooch and asks in surprise what it is. The lady explains that someone will leave it for her, and the guy says that he has a bad feeling and asks why she doesn't throw it away. The girl says that she thinks to show it to Sher first, because in the end, she can't bring some incomprehensible thing into her office. The young lady reflects on the fact that she is uneasy about her words, but she understands that the witch will visit her, and therefore she must check everything carefully. Ellie asks if he went to buy flowers for her. He replies that he went because he thinks it's beautiful. The Duchess thought that these flowers were really wonderful, and she didn't even think that he would give them to her. But when she smelled the flowers, she wondered why they smelled like red liquid. Cayenne looked at the girl and asked what happened. She realized that she couldn't say what was wrong, and then assured him that everything was fine, and thought that maybe she was wrong, because it couldn't be that he would have finished off these people in such a short period of time. Suddenly, a white bird began to chirp, and then sat on the girl's hand, and the prince asked if this was not Eloina's bird. Ellie assumes that something must have happened, and that they need to return to the castle as quickly as possible. When the Duchess came home, she immediately asked where her brother was, because she'd been very worried all this time. The assistant looked at the lady, and she did not understand what was happening and why he did not answer. The maid asks her ladyship what she should do with this bouquet, and the lady tells her to bring a vase of water and leave this bouquet in her office. Drayden informs the lady that Sir Eloin is waiting for her in the office, and then looks in surprise at the maid who brought the flowers. When the main character came to her brother's office, he said that he received this information from the imperial palace and showed her the letter. Eloise read the letter and realized that Emperor Elysian was planning to visit the north. She got angry and said a bad word. Hearing this, the young gentleman asks what it means because he has never heard this word before, but it seems that it means something rather severe. The young lady claims that it doesn't mean anything, and she just said it to put words together, and at that time, she thought that she screwed up. Eloise asks her sister what she will do. She asks what the probability is that information about His Highness has leaked from their side. The young gentleman replies that he would say that it is close to 0, and the lady says that this is not surprising, since her brother got rid of all the spies that they found so far. The young lady looked at her brother and thought that this carefree attitude of his probably meant that he was confident that their information had not leaked out. Eloise asks Johann if he took care of the people she mentioned last time. Hearing this guy, he asked in surprise what time she was asking about, and at that time, he thought that she was possibly talking about the day when they went outside the palace with His Highness. Johann tells the lady that he got rid of their bodies at the border. The Duchess thinks that getting rid of bodies on the server is certainly very convenient, and then turns to Dryden and asks him to tell her how the Emperor explained his visit to the north. At this time, the main character looked at the young master and thought that she knew this because he reacts to the word emperor and believes that this must be caused by his desire to take revenge on Elysian for seizing his throne. Eloise believes that, not to mention that he has a pretty strong desire to always be a winner, which he demonstrated in training with Johann. The Duchess understands that Elysian's visit will certainly fuel Cayenne's desire for revenge and to win back his crown. Ellie ponders whether she should hide Cayenne or take full advantage of the situation. The assistant reports that according to the letter sent by His Majesty, he simply wished to see her in person since much time had passed. Elion thinks that this is a very touching way of presenting complete nonsense. The lady thought that he wanted to see her in person and considered it absurd. Occupying similar positions of power, Elysian and Louise were very hostile to each other. However, she could have become Elysian's ally if she had killed Rosanna and betrayed Cayenne. Dryden tells her ladyship that he too does not trust the letter, knowing that the Emperor has been constantly pursuing her since she became Grand Duchess. Ellie says that even if this is true, she still doesn't understand how one of His Majesty's loyal subjects could refuse him a visit. The main character says that if they do not open the castle gates for him, it will be considered treason, and therefore she understands that she has no other choice. The gentleman believes that this will help to find out the true intentions of the Emperor and protect their crown prince. The Duchess says to open the gates, and at that time she thinks that she must do everything in her power to protect the north and her people. Eloise turns to Cayenne and says that he can stay in another estate during the Elysian's visit if he wishes, and at this time she thought that it was very likely that the Emperor would try to finish off the prince if he was seen here. The young lady understands that in this case the entire north will be accused of treason, and everyone will definitely be executed. Cayenne was surprised to hear this, and then asked if she wanted it. She looked at him and realized that this pitiful look was seeking her approval, and perhaps she would not see him again when he regained his memory. And that is why it was so strange and sad for her to think about it. Ellie says she hopes her choice won't disappoint him. The main character thought that everyone would probably be against the Cayenne showing up during the visit, but she understands that on the other hand, nothing motivates as much as the desire for revenge. Cayenne says that he will meet him, and the girl asks if he is sure about it. The guy claims that he is sure, because in the end, he does not want to disappoint her. The Duchess looked at the maids cleaning and thought that the castle had not been so lively for a long time. But she understood that for many years there had been no guests in the north, and especially their guest was none other than the Emperor himself. The young lady thought that she had a feeling that Mabel's appearance was somehow connected with the visit of the Elysian. And the girl remembers that the Shur said that it was nothing more than an ordinary brooch. The young gentleman asks what she has in her hands. She answers that it is a brooch that she picked up recently. The prince asks if she can give it to him. Ellie asks if he needs it, and then reminds him that last time he told her to throw it away. Cayenne says that he found a use for it, and at that time the girl thought that it didn't seem like something dangerous, and then gave the thing away. The assistant turns to her ladyship and tells her that she should go down. The main character thought that no one from the nobility would dare to wear a sword at a meeting with the emperor, but she understands that the north is a special place because there are dangers lurking around every corner. Eloise saw the carriage in which His Majesty arrived and realized that she would finally meet his Elysian. The emperor says that it is rather strange to see her in such a position and suggests that she rise and drop unnecessary formalities. Elysian turns to the Duchess and says that she hasn't seen him for a long time, and at this time the main character thought that he was damn handsome. Ellie says that she understands that it is too late, and then asks him to accept her congratulations on his coronation. He thinks that she should have told him this at the ceremony itself. Eloise says that as the eldest son of the Wayana house, he was there and congratulated her on her behalf, and then asks if this is true, and asks her not to take it to heart. The emperor says that he hopes to hear it from her, and then asks if she would like to walk with him. The lady agrees. Elysian says that in truth he came to ask her a personal question, and the lady asks him to continue. His Majesty asks if she will agree. The Duchess replies that she will make a decision after she hears what he wants to tell her, and at this time she does not understand what is happening at all. The Emperor asks if she will become his Empress. The main character was surprised to hear this and thought that she had just heard a dog barking. Elysian says that he thinks she is not very happy to hear this, and the lady objects and explains that he got it all wrong and says that she was simply amazed by his hair. His Majesty asks what her answer is. In that case, she says that she does not understand why he would propose something like that to her. The gentleman asks in surprise if she understands why, and wonders who else is suitable for the role of his partner besides her. The lady says that she hopes that he does not look upon her as one of the noble women here, and His Majesty asserts that he would not dare, and if that were so, he would not have chosen to come all the way north. Eloise says that she thought he decided to visit because she never left her castle, and he says that he sees that she still knows how to change the subject carelessly. The lady thinks that he is flattering her and says so. The main character thought that apparently in the novel, Eloise also had to go through something similar, but judging by the fact that she never got married, she managed to cope with it well, and she wonders how Eloise would act in this situation. The Duchess realizes that on the other hand, Eloise warned her about how treacherous the royals could be, and she thinks she now understands what he meant by that. The girl thought that she would not let Cayenne grow up like that, because at least she would make sure that he was always honest with her. The Emperor asks if she wants to return to the castle, and also asks if she thinks that he could not ask for her hand in front of strangers. And at this time, the main character thought that this is why she feels depressed next to this person, and believes that he has a frightening ability to know exactly what she is thinking. Elysian asks the Grand Duchess if she thinks his escorts have no idea why he is here. Eloise wonders if those people knew then what he was going to propose to her today, and he asks in surprise if she really thought he would come north for no reason. And the girl does not understand why no one objected to such a ridiculous proposal, but she understands that this only shows that the authority of the Elysian is so strong that it can destroy anyone who will be against him. Eloise turns to His Majesty and asks if this is his way of saying that excluding her, he will have control over everyone else, and also wonders if this is how it looks to him. The main character understands that initially the Grand Duchess must oppose the power of the Emperor in order to balance the power, but right now the North is in a neutral position when there is a possibility that the Crown Prince is still alive. Every step only advanced the Emperor's power. Even so, Eloise could not reveal that Cayenne was here under her protection simply to undermine Elysian's authority. The Emperor says that he was not trying to show off in front of her or anything like that, because if he marries her, then all the nobility will definitely express their displeasure, but he has the power to subjugate such opposition. The Duchess says she would like to know his true intentions, and he says she is now more like the Grand Duchess of Vaiana. He knows, and what he needs right now is more sovereign power. Eloise reports that she sees that he makes no attempt to conceal his intention to take advantage of her. His Majesty says that he rather covets the power she wields, and the lady believes that he speaks very frankly of this. The Emperor states that she should really think about it, and then asks who would dare to oppose their alliance if they joined forces. The young lady realizes that, to be precise, it is more likely that all the power will go to him, because in the end, the power of the imperial family is concentrated around the emperor and not the empress, and then says that she will be honest with His Majesty. The Duchess says that she also likes the power she has, which is why the role of empress does not appeal to her at all. The gentleman says that he does not think that this is something that should be said in front of the emperor, since he believes that she herself is terribly honest. The lady suggests that His Majesty think about it himself, and then says that she can live freely and as she wants in the north, and then asks if he can force her to move to the capital unless he wants to share the power of the imperial family with his empress. At this time, the main character thought that she really should watch what she says in front of the emperor, but she doesn't understand how to be polite to him when he irritates her so much, and that's why she feels worse, because it seems that she's beginning to understand what he's trying to achieve. Ellie understands that he wants to take control of the North into his own hands, and then says that, more importantly, that she has a personal dislike for him. Hearing this, the gentleman was surprised, and the girl asks how he removed her brother from his post. The emperor says that, firstly, as far as he knows, Eloise never wanted to take this post, and therefore he simply considered that he should be here to take over the reins of power when the Grand Duchess leaves the north. The young lady reports that he speaks as if he had been considering her to be his empress for a long time, and then says that she is quite certain that her brother returned to the north only a few weeks after the late emperor's death. Elysian says that this is why he likes her, because he thinks she is smart, and then says that if Eloise becomes the Grand Duke, then the other nobility will definitely not be able to take over the north. The emperor says that he feels a very familiar murderous aura nearby. Hearing this, the girl does not understand whether he really felt the aura of Cayenne, and she would like him to stop, but she does not understand why men are so emotional. Eloise says that it looks like this is her brother's aura, because if some man behaves like this with his sister, then he asks what brother wouldn't get nervous and would calmly watch this. The Duchess takes the emperor's hand and says that he must remember something, that he must never touch her without her permission, since he is not in the capital now, but in the north, and if something happens to him, no one will even know about it. Elysian says that this is why he likes her so much, and this is one of the reasons why he wants to get her. At this time, the girl thought that she was not obliged to respond to all his whims, but she understood that he was still the emperor, and then said that since he said so, she would make him one offer. The young lady says that, to be more precise, her father is missing in action, and the emperor says that Duke Vaillan's death was not officially recorded, and then asks how this is connected to her proposal. Ellie says that he probably knows that for the wedding of two aristocrats, the consent of all direct relatives is necessary, even if we are talking about the wedding of the Grand Duchess. The main character says that if her father gives his consent to this marriage, then she will think again about his proposal. A few minutes ago, the young gentleman offers to take a walk, and the main character agrees. And at that time, Eloise thought that something was wrong, because he arrived in such a luxurious carriage to pay a visit, and also brought his close associates with him. Elian thought about the rumors that Elysian is looking for an empress, and assumes that he came to offer this place to Eloise, and he knows that behind such a sweet face, there is a cunning and sly man. The Duchess's brother believes that the emperor is like a snake that waits for the right moment to pounce on its victim and swallow it whole. When the young gentleman heard that the emperor had offered the Duchess to become his empress, he was very surprised, and thought that this man had simply gone crazy, because he did not understand how he dared to covet his sister, and he would like her to never agree. The prince thinks about the need to think rationally, and if you think about it, he has light hair that looks beautiful and shines brightly, and is quite tall. He is the emperor. The crown prince remembers the lady's words that she likes soft, gentle, and sweet people, and that such people suit her taste, and he believes that the external emperor coincides with what she likes, but understands that he is still not the type of person who is worth protecting. The gentleman asks the woman if she thinks that they are very suitable for each other, even if you look at them from behind, and the aristocrat thinks that especially since His Majesty used to be a duke, they probably have a lot in common. The gentleman agrees with her because he believes that a person like the Duchess should live in the imperial palace and not in some barren lands. The man tells them to watch their tongues because this place is the Duchess's territory and not the barren lands. And the aristocrat says that the north is not the best place for women and then asks if he is right. The gentleman thinks that first of all it is a duchess, and then asks how he dares to say such a thing. The marquise says that he is very sensitive, and then claims that all girls dream of becoming an empress. The prince says that if he says any more stupid things, he will cut out his tongue. The marquis turns to him and asks what he said, and then screaming says that he is no longer the commander of the Holy Knights because he is not even a duke or an heir, and then asks how dare he address him like that. Eloise asks what his status has to do with it, and then reminds him that he will cut out his tongue because the Duchess will not even ask him about it. The aristocrat says, in surprise, that the emperor himself is here, and the young gentleman asks if he thinks that the emperor values him more than the Duchess. Hearing this, the man didn't even know what to answer, and Eloise tells him to shut up if he doesn't want to die. The marquis, leaving, says that he will talk to him again because he remembers it well. The prince, watching them, thought that Eloise himself was dealing with those little idiots and thought that at such moments he was even useful. The man asks the woman, in surprise, if she saw that the emperor just now and the Duchess did not even decline, and therefore believes that this means that she accepted his proposal. Cayenne looked at the lady and thought that she didn't even feel his anger because she considers it a relief, because perhaps it's thanks to Eloine's aura, and now everything worked out, but she thinks that in the future she should be more careful. The young gentleman understands that if they find out that he is under Eloise's protection, she could be in danger, and he wondered if he had the strength to protect her, because he understands that he would not have to constantly look around, but he believes that he should still be in his place. The crown prince thinks that he will behave well in front of the Duchess and tear to pieces anyone who dares to take the throne from him, no matter who it is. The emperor asks in surprise if she wants him to find Duke Vaillant, and the lady asks if it is not a fact that the father's consent is necessary. Eloise says that since she doesn't refuse, then he will be satisfied with this answer for now, and at that time, the girl thought that her father would never show up, and he had an unshakable character. Duke Vaillant had amazing abilities. He personally taught Eloise and Eloise how to manage people, which eventually allowed them to become the commander of the Holy Knights and the Grand Duchess. But most importantly, he was not one of those who would silently watch the death of Eloise. The main character reflects on the fact that he never appeared in the book until she died, and suggests that he might appear in the 3rd volume, which she has not read, since there are still 3 years left before the beginning of the book where Cayenne became emperor. Eloise says that she feels that the personal conversation is over and therefore suggests going inside. The emperor says that he heard some interesting news and then says that there are rumors that the younger brother of the former duke has an illegitimate child, and later he will introduce them. Hearing this, the main character thought that it seemed like he was still afraid of having an illegitimate child. But his doubts were natural, because on the contrary, it would be strange if he hushed up the matter. Elysian reports that this illegitimate son is in the north at the moment, and asks if that is not surprising. And the lady says that usually during times of unrest, such things happen. The Duchess asks how long he plans to stay here. He says that if she accepted his offer, he planned to stay for a long time. But since this is the situation, Ellie says that she understands and says that she will prepare everything necessary for the journey. His Majesty believes that other aristocrats in her place would ask to stay longer, at least out of politeness. The girl thinks that he has a lot of things to do in the capital and asks if that is not so. He says that everything is correct and thinks that the lady cannot be embarrassed by anything. The assistant turns to Her Highness and says that he needs to tell her something, and the Emperor says that he will probably go. The Duchess asks in surprise what happened, and the captain of the knights reports that Lord Eloise is very angry and asks if she sees the Viscount standing there. The assistant says that the Marquise had the imprudence to speak ill of her, and Mr. Eloise was angry with him. The lady asks what the man said, and the assistant explains that he asked if it is every girl's dream to become an empress, and it is even difficult to believe all his words. The main character thought that if Joachim reported to her, then it means that her brother is really very angry, and then she says that she understood and turns to His Majesty. The Emperor asks, "What is it?" And the Duchess says that she did not refuse his offer, and then asks if he could listen to one small request. Elysian says that if only he is able to fulfill it. The woman explains that she is talking about the man who sits at the very end and asks to give him to her. His Majesty says in surprise that he doesn't think she needs him, and the lady explains that he insulted her in front of her people and asks if he shouldn't answer for it. The Emperor says that since she did not refuse his offer, he can very well fulfill such a request, and the girl thanked him and then turns to her brother and tells him to deal with him. This Marquise had a dislike for Eloise. That's why he said that, and with his insults, he most likely wanted to insult all the knights of the north, including Eloise. The Duchess's brother turns to the man and says that he would like to tell him something. The Marquise asks in surprise what he is going to talk to him about, and the young gentleman thinks that it would be better to quietly leave there, and at that time, he thought that it is not for nothing that knights have a high fighting spirit, because they have to spill the enemy's red liquid. The Emperor says that it is clear from her face that she is bored, and the Duchess says that to be honest, she was only interested at the moment when her brother left the hall. His Majesty thinks that she speaks very openly, and then reports that her brother has returned. At this time, the girl thought that it seemed that he had already dealt with this Marquis. The Duchess says that it was necessary to get rid of the smell of the red liquid, and then Eloise apologizes and explains that he did not want to keep His Majesty waiting. Hearing this, the lords were surprised and thought that he had finished off the Marquis. And at that time the main character thought that it was funny to her because they all immediately shook from the words, "and the red liquid." The Emperor says that since her brother is here, he asks if now is the time to meet that very cousin. At this time, Ellie thought that Cayenne would be nervous, but he looks quite calm, but she assumes that maybe he is pretending to be calm. Elysian says that he is officially introducing himself and then objects and says that it is not worth it since he is an illegitimate child and he does not even know his origin. The Duchess does not understand why he brought this up since she believes that Cayenne should not be nervous. If Wyan were here, would he accept this illegitimate child? The main character says that she doesn't even know, because what's more important is that at the moment, she is the head of the Wayana clan. The Emperor believes that he does not even have proof that the blood of the Wayana clan flows in him. Eloise wonders if his black hair and red pupils are direct evidence, as she believes that no one can deny it. His Majesty says that in that case, he will have to prove his relationship himself. The young lady looked at the man and did not understand who this aristocrat was, and assumed that it could not be that she did not know such an important person who accompanies the Emperor himself. She saw a bottle with a potion, and the Emperor says that in the north there is a secret with which you can change the color of your hair and eyes, and then asks if this is true, and then says that this is a remedy that can remove the effect of the potion. Elysian says that it is a special drug that neutralizes the effects of other potions, and then asks how about giving it to this young man to drink. The main character asks in surprise if he doubts her words, and His Majesty asks if it is worth sorting this out right now. The girl understands that if she refuses, Elysian will begin to doubt even more, but she assumes that perhaps he just wants to test her. The northern lands are also part of the Empire, which means they are in the hands of the Elysian, and it is quite possible that he knows about the potion and wants to test the main character. The prince does not know what to do, but he believes that if Eloise refuses the emperor, he will begin to suspect that she is the prince, and even if he does not guess about it, he will still be suspicious of him. The crown prince believes that the emperor is sure that he is a prince, and probably brought poison with him, and this unknown man could also be Marquis Othine, known for his ability to brew potions. Cayenne understands that if this is really an antidote, then it must be taken into account that they could have changed the face of the Marquis of Othine with the help of a potion. But he knows that they can't waste time any longer, otherwise Eloise will end up in an unfavorable situation. The young master thought that in that case, it didn't matter to him, even if it was poison, and then said that he would drink it because he believed that it would help his cousin win His Majesty's trust. The crown prince believes that now is not the time for emotions over some title, since he will soon take that place anyway. The guy says that even if he dies, if the Duchess can win his favor, then he asks what could be more joyful. And at that time he noticed that the emperor was smiling slightly, and the others did not know this, but he knew that his look was saying that he wanted to test him. Cayenne believes that Elysian has absolutely nothing to lose in this dispute, and if he really does prepare poison for him, he will turn out to be the real illegitimate child of Duke Vaillant, and the emperor will be able to justify himself in any case. The prince understands that if his face does not change now, then his doubts about the north will become a little less. The emperor says that he thinks this is excellent because he hopes that he will prove his loyalty to the Duchess, and then suggests that they drink right now. Cayenne took the bottle and thought that it was too cold, and that it even felt strange to him, although he understood that in this situation it did not present a problem. The prince thinks about how he will have to pretend to Eloise that he is ill, and then says that he drank everything, and hopes that this will prove his loyalty to the Duchess. The emperor thought that, according to Othine, the effect of the magic should disappear as soon as he drinks the potion, and he tested it for effectiveness, a little doubtful, but for now it's worth believing. Elysian says that it seems that the red liquid of the Wayan cannot be replaced by anything, judging by how confidently he holds himself, and the main character says that, as he himself said, these are the genes of their family. Ellie doesn't understand why she's worried, but she hopes that he doesn't hurt anywhere, and remembers that he was a little unsteady when he left. When the girl entered the prince's room, she saw that he was lying on the bed, and she wondered if it was poison, and then asked the young gentleman if he was okay. The girl realizes that he is too pale, and then asks if the potion has already started to work, and also asks if he is feeling unwell. The prince believes that the potion did not start working now, and asks if she remembers the man who was sitting opposite her. The lady says that she saw him for the first time, and the guy explains that this is Marquis Othine. Hearing this, the main character says that she heard that he is very skilled in potion making but does not understand why he changed his face. Ellie says that he is the one who brews potions, and then asks what his words mean, that the potion did not start working right away, and also asks if he felt bad right after he drank it. The young lady realizes that the eyes and hair color remained the same, and she wonders if it really was poison. And then she says that she will call the Shear because he drank a magic potion, and he will help him better than a doctor. The prince claims he is fine, and then tells her to take it. At this time the girl saw that this brooch looked familiar, and he explains that this brooch that she had, and then asks if it belongs to Mabel, and says that he did not think that she would run into her. Hearing this, the Duchess realized that he knew the sorceress, and recalled that according to the plot, they knew each other, but Cayenne came to the north at 15 years old, and she became interested in who she really was. Cayenne says that it is hard to believe, but in fact she is a spellcaster. After hearing this, the main character does not understand why in the book she did not take Cayenne's side, because she believes that if she really is a spellcaster, then in theory she should have helped the direct heir. The guy explains that she put her power into the brooch, and thanks to this power, the potion did not affect him. The girl understands that thanks to this brooch, he stayed alive and believes that in such moments, this witch is very useful. Ellie remembers that she saw her several times as a child, and she seemed very annoying to her. Cayenne pretended not to know what kind of brooch it was, but in fact, he immediately guessed who it belonged to. He just didn't like that it was taking up all of Eloise's attention, and as soon as he heard about the Emperor's visit, he immediately realized that Mabel had left the brooch on purpose. The main character asks if the brooch can cleanse because it belongs to a sorceress. He says that this vein, after all, absorbs poison from itself and rusts from this. The guy says that he told the truth, and he immediately understood what this thing was, but did not say, for fear that she would not believe him, since many do not believe in the existence of spellcasters. The lady asks how she cannot believe him, and then explains that she was just a little surprised. But by the way, he looks unwell, and then asks if he is in a lot of pain. The prince says that it hurts, but it is bearable, and it seems that the brooch simply neutralized the effect of the potion. The girl asks if she should call him a doctor, but he objects and assures her that everything is fine, and simply asks her to stay close to him, and also asks if she will take his hand. Eloise asks in surprise what he remembered, and Cayenne wonders if she will still communicate with him like she does now. The young gentleman says that if she distances herself from him because his memory has returned, he thinks he will become very sad about it. The Duchess asks if he offers to continue calling him by his first name, and the guy agrees with her and reminds her that she promised him this even if he remembers. Ellie assures that this is true, but asks if he is really okay because she thought that he would be uncomfortable, and the prince replies that everything is fine. And on the contrary, it is even more convenient for him. The girl says that she will treat him as she does now and will not distance herself, and he asks if the lady will sit with him until he falls asleep. Hearing this, the Duchess, surprised, asks if he will fall asleep yet, and Cayenne explains that on the first day he slept well because she was nearby, and therefore he thinks that now he will recover faster if she is with him. The next day, the Emperor thought that he could consider the goal of coming to the north half achieved, and the Duchess told him to be careful and left. The Marquis turns to His Majesty and tells him that the Duchess treats him too carelessly, and the gentleman says that it is because she is the Grand Duchess, and this is her special right. The Emperor asks if he knows that she was his bride. Upon hearing this, the man is surprised, and then says that this is the first time he hears about this, and there were not even any such rumors. Elysian reports that this is not official, and that they were previously betrothed in the palace in childhood, and also suggests that the Duchess does not seem to remember this, but believes that if she had not become a Duchess, it is quite possible that she would now be his wife. The Marquis asks if he was sincere when he proposed to her, and His Majesty asks how much military force he thinks the Duchess can mobilize. However, he understands that no matter how many there are, he wonders if these forces can be compared with the military might of the imperial palace. The Emperor reports that he also cannot ignore the forces that support her, especially at the moment when his nephew has fallen in, because the aristocrats believe that now only she can resist him. The Marquis asks about Wayan's illegitimate son, since he heard the knight call him Lord Cayenne, and then asks if it is too suspicious to be a coincidence. An illegitimate son who appeared out of nowhere, and to be honest, it would be better to say that this does not arouse suspicion. However, the Emperor believes that in the current situation, it is too dangerous to go against the Duchess. The man asks how it is possible that they have the same name. Elysian says that he was also surprised when he heard the name Cayenne, but he thinks that the Duchess is not the kind of person who would behave so recklessly. The gentleman asks in surprise what he means, and the emperor explains that if this illegitimate son is his missing nephew, then they would have called him not Cayenne, but by another name, since he believes that they would have unfavorable additional suspicions because of the name. The Marquis asks if he really believes that this young man is the illegitimate son of Wyan. His Majesty replies that until the former Duke of Wyan returns, they will not know. The assistant asks if he will ever return, because he knows that 4 years have passed since his disappearance. At this time, the main character thought that maybe she needed to sprinkle some salt, because in any case, they managed to avoid suspicion. But it didn't seem like he suspected anything when the prince was called by name. Eloise understands that since Elysian has no doubts about anything, and Cayenne has regained his memory, it is time for them to start gathering the leaders of the Knights' Guilds. The main character is thinking about the fact that she needs to talk to the prince, because maybe they will be able to find a clue and find out who killed the former emperor. Elysian is the first suspect. However, it is too early to draw conclusions, and then turns to Johann and tells him to gather the guild leaders tonight. The young lady turns to Drayden and tells him to sprinkle salt near the gate, because she can't just leave it like that. When Ellie entered the room, the guy looked at her and said that he thought that they would talk alone, but the man said that it seemed that his presence was causing them inconvenience. Cayenne reports that at such moments he sees that he is quick-witted and then asks why he constantly interferes in everyday life. He replies that this is precisely why he interferes, because he is quick-witted. At this time, the main character thought that she was very tired, and the young gentleman said that he thought that she was no longer at the age when a brother could interfere in his sister's affairs. Eloise says that he is not the only brother, and then asks how he can say that since she believes that unlike some, they are connected by ties of aristocratic blood. Cayenne says that aristocrats don't necessarily have to be related by blood, and at that time, the girl thought that the prince's voice sounded rather bold today, and she wondered if he had become so nervous because of Elysian. Ellie tells her brother to wait for her because she needs to tell him something, and then reports that His Highness has regained his memory. Hearing this, the young gentleman was surprised and said that this was true, and yet as someone wanted, the Duchess thought that maybe it was because of his returned memory, but the prince seemed to have changed slightly, and his expression became more cruel. The lady understands that this will only be to her advantage, because one cannot show weakness in front of aristocrats, and she would like him not to look at her like that. The Duchess believes that the most important thing, after he ascends to the throne, is to pacify the spirit of the aristocrats, and for this purpose, it is necessary to emphasize his tough and cold-blooded image, although in the future, Cayenne himself will become like that when he takes up the sword. Louise asks his brother where he is going, and the guy replies that he is torturing Shira. The girl asks why in surprise, and then wonders what he has suddenly done. Eloise tells him that he made a big mistake, and then says that it is time for him to go, and the young lady thinks that it looks like the Shir has done something very wrong. Cayenne tells Eloise that he is curious about something, and she wants to know what it is. The prince asks if she sees herself marrying her uncle. Hearing this, the main character was surprised and asked what he was talking about because he thought it was impossible. The girl asks him if she can marry Elysian when she herself promised to put him on the throne. His Highness says that he has light hair and she likes it, but at that time the main character thought that she didn't mean that she only likes light hair. The young gentleman claims that he is taller than her and also taller, and besides, he is gentle and caring. Hearing this, the Duchess thought that he still remembered her words, because she knew that this time she simply described the opposite of Cayenne. The prince explains that he was worried that she would leave him. The lady tells him that a few years ago Elysian was a duke, and although he does have imperial blood, he asks if that means she likes men with very high status. The main character thought that she most likely meant that she doesn't like inferior and insecure people, and then says that this is approximately so. His Majesty says that he understands and asks if this means that only the prince remains. Hearing this, the Duchess does not understand what he means and believes that this cannot be. But if he is 17 years old, then that is the age when he is already interested in the opposite sex. But she understands that now, the most important thing is to return the throne, and she cannot be distracted by feelings. Eloise understands that especially when he turns 20, he will go to the capital and meet Rosalind there, and therefore she needs to be very careful for this, and then tells Cayenne that now is not the time. His Majesty asks in surprise why the lady explains that this is possible even after he ascends the throne. Cayenne wonders if it means that after he takes the throne, who will be able to do whatever he wants. And at that time, she thought that even the emperor cannot live like that, but wants to. But he can afford a romantic relationship. The main character thinks that if only she doesn't get between them, as it was in the plot, then everything will end happily. And then she agrees with him and says that he can do whatever he wants. The prince tells her to remember, because she promised him. Having heard this, the girl does not understand what he is talking about and what exactly she promised, but she believes that he needed permission to do things his own way when he takes the throne. Because for Cayenne, she is something like a mentor. Ellie says that he can do whatever he wants just so that he doesn't become a tyrant. The guy hears this and says that she shouldn't say anything else later. The Duchess agrees with him and then says that something else is more important. Now, since yesterday, they were unable to talk normally because he was feeling unwell. The lady asks if he has anyone under suspicion regarding the killer of the former emperor, and then says that if he doesn't want to, he doesn't have to talk. Cayenne didn't think for long, and then took the girl by the hand and said that whoever it was, his decision to become emperor would not change. The main character looked at the guy and thought that this look meant that he had unpleasant memories, and thought that maybe she was too strict because his memory had recently returned. Ellie knows that the main character was not at the crime scene during the murder of the emperor, and then hugs the guy and apologizes. The Duchess says that she thinks she was too impatient and that it is a terrible memory for him, and then claims that she will definitely give him his place back and thought that she does not want him to be sad. When the girl went out into the corridor, she looked at the rusty bird and thought about how it seemed to her that Cayenne didn't really like her, but he even told her to throw away the brooch as soon as he found out that it belonged to Mabel. The main character remembered how he asked her if she was going to throw away this brooch, and at that time, she thought that it was not easy to meet such a bird in the north because its whistle seemed very familiar to her. Suddenly, Ellie saw a lady with pink hair who asks how the Duchess was doing, and then says that if this sword had not been pulled out by her, it would have cut off her head. Mabel says that normal people who draw their swords at such speeds cannot stop as quickly as she does. Then she says that she did not expect her to draw her sword. The main character believes that no one can appear behind her back without her knowledge unless it is a killer. The lady with pink hair asks if she can prove herself with this, and at that time, the young lady saw that her brooch in her hand had disappeared, and thought that it was true that this witch wanted to help her and Cayenne, that she was throwing something like this before leaving. The Duchess says that it seems the spell has the ability to foresee the future, and then asks if that is true. The lady with pink hair replies that it does a little, but not to the point where it can read her thoughts. Ellie realizes that it is true that she was able to escape danger thanks to Mabel's pin, but she wonders if she can really believe in Mabel. The main character reminds the sorceress that she said that she would become her man. She says that everything is so, and the lady asks if she meant her and not His Majesty Cayenne. Eloise reports that the man she was supposed to show her devotion to as a divine beast was not the direct heir to the empire, and asks if that is so. Then she claims that it must be so. Mabel says that his throne has not been taken away yet, and asks if that is true. The Duchess asks what she means, and the girl explains that what she worships is not a direct heir. The sorceress reports that she only acts when the throne is unstable, and her instinct tells her that the throne is in danger. The lady with pink hair says that the owner of the throne is in danger and she can't do anything alone, and so she can only follow others. In short, create a king, and this person is the Grand Duchess, Eloise Viana. A few days later, the woman thought that this day had finally come, and she would no longer be able to return, and then she opened the door and entered the room. The Duchess understands that the moment she makes an announcement to everyone, all her decisions will affect their lives. The girl understands that although Cayenne is the direct crown prince, she then says that she wants to take the throne. Ellie asks her brother if he leaked the information, and he says that he did what she asked, and then says that this is her first visit to the territory in 4 years. At this time, the main character thought that after Reincarnation, this was her first visit, and said that she was curious how many people would come. Eloise asks if everything is okay with her, and she asks if he still sees her as a duchess, and then says that if she can't handle this herself, she won't dare to live up to the great imperial title. The brother assures that this is not so, and then says that when she was a duchess, murderers were already targeting her, and this is what worries him. At this time, the girl thought that she had no idea how the sons and daughters of other nobles, but Eloise and Eloise, lived under the threat of murder. The lady believes that the main reason must be that the Duke of Vaillant spoiled his wife so much that he did not find himself a new one. Ellie thanks him for worrying about her, and then assures him that everything will be fine, because she is going with Joachim, and Cayenne is also with her. The main character thought that if he saw how skilled Cayenne was in killing magical beasts, then he probably would not hesitate to finish them off one by one. The lady says that it is obvious that the Cayenne will die at her hands before he can intervene. Hearing this, the guy says that if she drags him north, he can personally torture him for her. The Duchess says she will think about it, and he asks if it would be better to go with him than with His Majesty. After all, Wyan's bloodline protects the city much better. The sister wishes him a good journey and to take care of His Majesty, because she will be worried about them. The lady says that she will return in 3 days if nothing unexpected happens, because she only wants to meet the Count and she can't wait. Ellie knows she's a little nervous, but she's interested not only because it's her first time going to another estate, and not to mention that this will be the first time Cayenne will be introduced to nobles outside the castle, and she thinks it will be a good experience for him, and a chance to learn how to subjugate nobles. The Duchess turns to the Cayenne and says that she is sure that everything will go smoothly, but in case of danger, he should constantly monitor his surroundings, especially when entering the estate of any nobleman. The guy asks in surprise what she means by danger, and the girl explains that not everyone will be happy with his visit. His Majesty asks if this danger is in any way connected with what she ordered Eloise to do. At this time, the main character thought about what she told her brother to do, to leak information that she was leaving her castle, and believed that she could really get into trouble because of this. The girl understands that in the end, in this way, she will take care of the nobles around her as soon as they find out. Ellie agrees with him and says that she didn't expect him to grasp everything on the fly, and then reports that she intentionally leaked information about her movements. The guy asks in surprise why he thinks that she is putting herself in danger, and knows that there will probably be a lot of killers who want to finish off the Grand Duchess outside of her castle. The Duchess says that she hopes so, and then says that if they now take care of the nobles who might rise up against her, this will prevent all possible dangers when he ascends the throne. Cayenne agrees with her, and then says that he doesn't want her to put herself in danger because of him. The prince says that if he asks her not to do this again, it might seem like he is ordering her, so he won't. And then he says that instead, he will kill with his own hands anyone who tries to harm her. At this time, the main character thought that he was putting his words out as if he wanted to protect the one who was dear to him, but he was probably saying this because he needed her, and if so, it wasn't so bad, and then he said that he could do as he wished. The guy says that he has no reason to grant a merciful death to those who are against her and are interested in the untruth. The lady again agrees with him. The silver-haired woman greets the Duchess. Ellie tells Countess Roxana that they haven't seen each other for a long time. The lady reports that she heard that the lady was busy destroying demonic creatures. The Duchess says that she has been busy, but now everything is fine. And no matter how busy she is, she must go out from time to time, because the last time was 4 years ago. Roxanne looked at the guy and thought that it must be him, and then suggested to continue inside. The Countess reports that she has ordered the servant to take care of the knights who accompany her, because in any case, 4 years have passed since his last inspection of the lands, and she understands that it really is a very long time ago. Ellie says that it's just time to fully take responsibility as the Grand Duchess, and then asks if she understands yet. The lady asks if she means the fact that the illegitimate son of the Wyan house is actually the crown prince, and then says that she doubts that there is a single person who knows the Wyan house better than she does. Countess Roxana was practically the only noblewoman who was close to both Eloise's father and her mother. Roxana knows how impossible it is that there is an illegitimate child in the Wyan house. The main character understands that in the novel, the Countess never betrayed Eloise, and after the premature death of Eloise's mother, Roxana became her godmother long ago. The lady was cruelly tried for helping Eloise in the uprising. She never said a single word that could put her goddaughter at risk. The Countess knelt down and greeted His Royal Highness. He said that was enough, and she could stand up. At this time, the Duchess thought that Cayenne was commanding her completely naturally. And if you think about it, he never had problems in dealing with those who were lower than him in status, despite his lack of memory. Ellie believes that in the future, he will become a wonderful emperor, and she is so proud of him. And then turns to Roxanne and says that she is sure that she already knows the reason why she visited her before anyone else. The Countess assures her that no matter what, she will always be on her side. Ellie says that she is grateful to her for this, but wants to show something to His Highness. The woman asks if she means how to deal with nobles, and the girl says that as expected, she knows her very well. Roxana says that it is timely, and there is one Viscount who has been causing a lot of trouble lately. The lady reports that he has suddenly increased the tax 3 times. Hearing this, the lady does not understand how he dares to increase the tax without her knowledge, and thinks that it seems she was too lenient. Eloise says that this Viscount will be a great example. The godmother says that she has prepared something in advance, just in case, and with her permission, she will go to her study and bring it. The Duchess tells the prince that she will now teach him how to put nobles in their place, and he, surprised, asks if he can't just finish them off. The main character objects and says that it is impossible to do this, and he asks in surprise why. The lady explains that even if they are just pretending to be vassals, they are still her people, and therefore they cannot be finished off so easily. Cayenne wonders if he can then finish off those who don't even pretend to support him. At this time, Ellie thought that he probably wants to ask what to do with the traitors, because he believes that forgiving traitors is the worst option, and it would be problematic if someone came to the side of the Elysian with his. The Duchess tells him that he needs irrefutable proof of their infidelity, and that this is necessary for the other vassals to agree to the punishment. He agrees with her and says that he will take this into consideration. The lady turns to the Grand Duchess and informs her that she has brought information about the vassals at her request. Eloise says that she should have prepared them herself, but made her do all her work for her. The Countess asks not to say so, because she thinks it is almost impossible to rule such a vast north alone. Roxana says that this is why she has vassals like her. Hearing this, the lady thought that she was right, because the more vassals she has, the less work she has. The Countess turns to His Royal Highness and asks if there is anything he wants, and then says that there is no one more capable of helping him achieve his goal. The lady says that she hopes that he will remember the help the Duchess gave him, even in the distant future. Hearing this, Eloise turns to the lady, and the prince assures that everything is fine, because in the end, she says the right things. Roxanne says that it seems that her words were too frank, because the Duchess is like her own daughter, and asks to simply take them as the delirium of an old caring godmother. Cayenne asks in surprise if she is Eloise's godmother. The lady says that she became her godmother as soon as her mother passed away when she was very young. At this time, the main character thought that when Eloise became the Grand Duchess, their relationship became like that of an ordinary lord and vassal. But even so, Roxanne still treats her like a daughter, and therefore believes that she did what she shouldn't have. The Countess says that it is not official, but during the period of the Duchess's grief for her mother, she told her to call her godmother. The prince assures her that she will never have to worry about Eloise because of him. At the estate of the Viscount Hashem, the following afternoon, he asks the Grand Duchess on what business she has honored him with her visit. The main character explains that she heard a strange rumor, and apparently one of her vassals raised his tax, and then asks what he thinks about it. Kashaman assures that he knows nothing, and the lady asks if he claims that Countess Roxana is lying. The vassal says that Countess Roxana would never lie to her, because according to him, she is a very gentle and kind woman. Ellie thought that among other nobles, her godmother was known for her cold-bloodedness and ruthlessness, and therefore she was sure that the Viscount knew that if Roxanne found out about what he said, she would immediately rush at him with a sword, at the ready given her character. The Viscount falls to his knees and begs for forgiveness, and then says that if he is forgiven just once, he swears his loyalty until the end of his days. The Duchess says that this is wonderful, and she will forgive him just this once, because after all she cannot help but take into account his long-standing achievements with her father. Hearing this, the prince, surprised, asks the lady if she is really going to forgive him. The man thanks her, and Eloise says that only if he agrees to cut the tax to a third of what it is now for the entire next year. The lady explains that by now she means the amount that was supposed to be and was before he raised it. Hearing this, the Viscount asks for forgiveness and begs the Duchess to be reasonable, since he believes that it is impossible to manage the land with such a low tax. Eloise says that she is sure that the triple tax has become a burden on the people of his land, and since he has tripled the amount, she asks whether it would not be fair to reduce it by a third. The man says that he has to pay her taxes, and she asks where he will spend the money he received from people, and then asks if he is now worried about paying her. The assistant asks the lady whether to cut off his head, and she tells him to wait, and then turns to the Viscount and says that if you think about it, his youngest daughter is getting married soon, and thinks it would be funny to strip him of his title right before her marriage. Hearing this, the Viscount became frightened and asked the Grand Duchess to show mercy at least to his daughter. The lady asks how about tripling the tax he pays her. The man says he will do as she orders and cut the citizens' tax threefold. Hearing this, the Duchess turns to Cayenne and asks if he sees that it is not difficult to tame the nobleman, and all he needs is to press on his weakness. At this time, the main character thought that she was ready to hide the weaknesses of those who were loyal to her, but when it came to the unfaithful, she used their weaknesses against them without hesitating for a second. A few minutes later, the Viscount informs the Duchess that he has signed the contract, and the lady asks if he knows what will happen if he breaks his word, and then leaves. Ellie thought about how she had told Cayenne and Joachim to come back so she could go to Roxanne's estate right now. Walking along the corridor, the girl realized that someone was following her. At this time, the stranger watching the lady thought that this was the woman, and the rumor about her beauty turned out to be true. But he understands that he must finish her off with his own hands, and considers it a pity. The mercenary understands that the lady is faster than he thought, but he thinks that he cannot lose her, and therefore quickly goes after her. When the guy entered the other room, he saw that it was empty, and the lady was not there. And then he asked in surprise where she had disappeared to, because he had been following her closely. Suddenly, the mercenary saw a dagger in front of his eyes, and the Duchess greeted him. The lady asks if it is hard to die right away, and therefore suggests that he enjoy the pain to his heart's content and then die. He asks in surprise what is wrong. Ellie says that no matter how much she looks at him, he does not look like an ordinary servant working here. The guy says that he is a gardener. Hearing this, the girl thought that this was a ridiculous excuse, because she understood that what kind of gardener would use a sword, and then asked if he knew what her servants were learning first. The main character tells him to never follow the Duchess secretly, and if he is waiting for his friends, then he better stop waiting for them. The guy asks fearfully what she means, and the lady replies that it will be difficult for them to survive, and therefore suggests that he stop talking about nonsense, and then asks who told him to do this. Cayenne looked at the tied-up mercenary, and then asks Joachim what Eloise does in situations like this. He replies that she usually deals with the attackers after finding out who is behind them, and then asks if he has another solution. The assistant reports that her life was threatened many times in the palace, and he cannot do this now because he knows that the person will say anything under the torment of pain. The prince says that Eloise would not like it if he got in the way, and then asks if that is true. Joachim says that he is sure that she would praise him because she is the only one who defends the north, and recognizes that he is capable of doing such elementary things. Cayenne thought that it would be right to make a decision after seeing Eloise's reaction. The main character looked at the mercenary and thought that he looked like a hired killer, and if he was loyal to the one he serves, he would have killed her right before he was captured. The Duchess reflects that he is not bad, but remains silent, despite the fact that his arms are possibly broken. The mercenary wonders why they don't ask anything upon hearing this. The lady asks how dare he tell her this, and then says that first she must cut out his tongue. The prince turns to the lady, and she says that it smells like red liquid, and asks if he is hurt. He says that everything is fine, and that he and Joachim did something, and then touches the tree, and asks if she is disappointed. Ellie assures that everything is fine, and then says that he is a good boy. Hearing this, the young gentleman asks in surprise if she is disappointed that he did not behave well. She assures that she is definitely not. The girl tells the guy that he needs to be nice only to her, and at that time, she thought that he needs to be a good boy only for her, and she knows that she said that. And it sounds kinda weird. The assistant informs her ladyship that they have captured them all. She wonders how many there were. Joachim says that only 2, and they finish them off. Hearing this, the mercenary asks in surprise if they killed his comrades. Cayenne asks if they were all following the orders of one person, and the assistant says that it seems like they were sent by one person. The main character grabbed the mercenary by the hair and asked who gave the orders. He replied that it was Baron Asman. The Duchess says that if he wanted to finish her off so much, he doesn't understand why he sent such weaklings, because he believes that she deserves to have at least an archmage as her opponent. Eloise thinks that people are starting to underestimate her because she hasn't left the castle for so long, and then turns to Johann and says that he can do whatever he wants with him. Mercenary Viskrivaya says that she is late, and then claims that now she knows who gave the orders. The Duchess says that she is not so kind as to feel sorry for the mercenary who came to finish her off. The assistant turns to Her Royal Highness and suggests that he watch carefully, and the lady says that he must learn to order others to do his dirty work for him. Joachim put the mercenary into eternal sleep, and the Duchess thought that she should order the Viscount to get rid of the body. The prince says that he himself wanted to finish him off, and then turns to the lady and reminds her that she said that he could finish off anyone who threatened her. Eloise explains that she is simply teaching him for the future when he takes the throne, because she knows that the time will surely come when his subordinates will have to get their hands dirty for him. Cayenne agrees with her and says that next time she should let him take care of them himself. Roxana asks how Viscount Heshamain reacted. The lady replies that he insisted that the information was incorrect. Hearing this, the countess smiled and said that she believed that he would have to be sent to the grave at their next meeting, since she believed that he had already lived too long. Ellie says that he turned so pale when she said that the information came from her. Hearing this, the woman asks if it means that he is still afraid of her. The main character thought that the subjects would soon learn about how Viscount Hesheman treated the bodies of the mercenaries, and believed that this would be a silent warning that the same fate would befall them if they ever disobeyed her. The Countess says that His Royal Highness seems gentler than she remembers him, and then asks if the girl calls His Royal Highness by name. At this time, Ellie reflects on how the prince seems softer, and believes that he behaves much better than in the original novel. Roxana turns to her ladyship and says that she may consider this to be an old lady's concern, but she thinks she should be careful. Eloise says that she knows this, and when he gets the throne, everyone will start hunting for her. The Grand Duchess will swear support to the Emperor, and she will become the most influential after the Emperor himself. In fact, until the Emperor gains complete control over the imperial court, the Grand Duchess may even be more influential than him. The young lady understands that no matter what, the most important thing for her now is to make Cayenne an emperor, and as long as she remains on good terms with him, she is sure that they will never become enemies. The godmother says that this is not what she was worried about, and upon hearing this, the girl asks in surprise if she didn't want her to be wary of the fact that His Royal Majesty might try to subjugate the North in the future. Roxanne says that although she has not taken his side before she knows this for sure, and then says that His Royal Majesty can be a cunning stepfather when it comes to coming up with a plan to get what he wants. At this time, the main character thought that when she remembers what Cayenne was like in the novel, what she says doesn't seem so strange, and then asks what she will try to tell her then. The woman says that older people tend to notice things better, and she wants to say that when it comes to her, His Royal Highness seems. Suddenly, a knight enters the room and screaming addresses her ladyship and reports that demonic beasts have suddenly gone wild in the northern forest. Eloise. She quickly mounted her horse and thought that it was good that Roxanne's estate was close to her castle. But what was more important was that she didn't have to worry that Eloise had stayed behind to defend the castle again. The main character understands that she still can't relax, and the assistant turns to her ladyship and says that it seems the forest has become dangerous. Drayden says that the demonic beasts went berserk 3 hours ago, but now they have calmed down a bit, and the lady says that she is heading there immediately. Ellie looked at the servant and asked if the boundary stone was broken, and he said that it was not quite so, and at that time, she looked at the master and thought that he had black hair, and that this was a distinctive feature of the Wyan house. The man says that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and the girl asks in surprise if he is the father, and at that time she became interested, since it was not said that the Duke of Viana died, but she considered the possibility that he was still alive. The young lady does not understand why he had to appear. Now, the father approached the girl and then hugged her. The main character thought that this is actually not so bad, and it is probably because he is her father. The gentleman asks how she is doing, and Ellie says that she thinks she should ask him about it. The father replies that he is doing well, and her brother says that she is now the Grand Duchess. Ellie says that she sees that he has already met with Eloise, and then asks why he didn't come here with him. He replies that his son is now dealing with demonic beasts. The young lady says that she understands, because he left him to take care of the rest, and came first. He says that this is true, and then tells her that one very annoying fellow is trying to pursue him to the end, but Eloise will take care of everything, and tells her not to worry. The gentleman says that besides that, he sees that his new nephew is also here. Cayenne says that it is an honor for him to meet him uncle. At this time, the main character thought that he must have immediately guessed who Cayenne was, but he does not understand why he calls him nephew, and the prince immediately called his father uncle, and these two are simply amazing. The man says that it seems like a lot has happened in his absence, and the girl says that he was gone for 4 years, and during that time, an entire mountain range could change in the north. The lady turns to Anna and orders her to take her father to his room. The man says that he thinks that he is not so old yet to forget where his own room is. Ellie says that his previous room has long since become hers. Hearing this, her father smiles and says that this is understandable, since she is, of course, the Grand Duchess after all. The daughter says that she would like to hear what happened to him during all this time, but first offer him to rest, since she thinks that he probably could not take care of his health until this moment, and she will order the cooks to prepare something special for him. The father thanks her and then says that they still have a lot to discuss because he missed them, and then he walked up to the girl and hugged her. Eloise turns to the prince and says that he did well and thinks that he was probably surprised by her father's sudden return, but he was able to remain calm. Cayenne says that since he did well, he offers to praise him again. The girl says that without even thinking, he called him uncle and thinks that it was a great job, and he did not get confused in his presence. The guy explains that he didn't want to seem scared because after all he is the crown prince and shouldn't hesitate in front of the nobility, and besides, he needed to impress her father. In the evening when the girl saw her father, she said that now he looked like a nobleman, and he said that he was glad to hear it. At this time, the main character thought that she first needed to discuss a more important topic, and then asked where he had been all this time. Father says that before that, he thinks he should find out why the crown prince is now in the north. Cayenne turns to Mr. Wei Yan and says that he will answer this question and tell why specifically here. The gentleman says that he understood, and this means that the previous emperor was killed, and he fled to the north, and then says that if they both decided to do so, they would follow his example. At this time, the young lady thought that he didn't seem angry at all about his daughter receiving his title when his death hadn't even been confirmed. Ellie reflects on the fact that, on the other hand, someone must always rule over the north, and then says that now it is their turn to listen to his story father, and wonders what he was busy with for so long, and returned only now. The main character understands that if the emperor learns about the return of the former duke, he must ask him for his daughter's hand in marriage, and she does not want this to happen. The father explains that he went to find it, and it is a gift for his daughter, and in his hand he holds a thing that looks like an egg. He explains that it is a gift for her coming of age, and to be precise, although he did not think that it would last so long. The gentleman explains that he thought it would take about 2 years to get his daughter's coming of age gift, so he went to the border to find it. Ellie asks if this means he's been on the border for the last few years, and then asks how valuable this thing is. The father explains that this is the egg of a demonic beast, and at this time the girl does not understand why he is so proud of himself, and more importantly, that it is normal that such an egg is located far from the border. Father says that it was supposed that he would give it to her when she came of age, but some unforeseen circumstances got in the way. Ellie asks how old she was when she told him she wanted such an egg. He replies that she was about 8 years old, and she was still little, and then asks his daughter if she knows the value of this gift. The main character was surprised to hear this, and thought that he was a complete idiot who was ready to do anything for his daughter.